Great Tribal Chief. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 351, Follow-up Goals. Chief Junaruska's laughter seemed to sound like an offensive horn, and more than 3,000 elite Cherokee men armed with weapons began to roar uniformly. Luluka, 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 Luluka. Luluka means brave in Cherokee language. There is no doubt that the Stone Bear, who has successfully brought back the powerful Cree tribe, including the chiefs, all the high levels, fully deserves this title. In fact, this is the second time that the soldiers guarding the tribe of the Cherokee royal court have given this title to Stone Bear. The last time he completed the challenge of divine edict immunity in full view of the public. At that time, it was these guys who cheered Luluka to him. If it was said that Stone Bear used personal force to conquer the men of the royal court guarding the tribe last time, then even Chief Junaruska was completely conquered by his move this time. The title Luluka was given to him and the expeditionary soldiers behind him. Obviously, there was no problem. He and the expeditionary soldiers behind him definitely deserved this title. Chief Junaruska's little tongue of laughter came out. He also really didn't expect that he was just holding on to the idea of a try, and as a result, this guardian brought him such a huge surprise. Although Chief Junaruska is now the chieftain of the Cherokee tribe, in fact he always feels that his position as chieftain is not very stable. After all, how Junaruska's line got the position of chief 100 years ago, he knows best. Strictly speaking, the process of Junaruska becoming the chief of the Cherokee tribe was not so glorious. Therefore, even if that matter has passed for 100 years, the current chief Junaruska has always wanted to reverse this situation. And now Shi Xiong has brought back the entire core high-level members of the Cree tribe, which is obviously a good opportunity. After all, the Guardian's expeditionary army was established with his own support, and for this expedition, he gave the expeditionary army and the Guardian almost unlimited power. Now, his support has obviously succeeded, and he can win the Cree tribe, which is a great contribution anyway. With this credit, no one is saying that Junaruska's line is not right. Chief Junaruska touched the thick beard of his chin and looked at the scene in front of him with satisfaction, full of pride. Now it's just the most powerful explosive bear of the Cree tribe, but there are still many wild wolves around the tribe. If this big man can make persistent efforts to take down all the surrounding tribes, in this way thanks to his credit, who would dare to mention the things of the year? Almost in an instant, Chief Junaruska's thoughts turned countless times. Dear Chief Junaruska, I am fortunate enough to live up to my mission. I led the expeditionary army and completely defeated the royal court of the Cree, and brought the chiefs, high priests and many high-level clans of the Cree to you. Come back. Shi Xiong dismounted, amidst the cheers of the sky, and under the gaze of the high level of the Cree tribe, he came to Chief Junaruska in a few strides and reported loudly. Good, 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 my warrior, the great guardian of the Kabul sacrifice, and those brave expeditionary brothers. You have done so well. As the chief of the tribe, I am proud of you. Chief Junaruska's eloquence is still quite good. He is dressed up, and under the shining of the setting sun, he has an inexplicable momentum all over his body. After saying these words, Chief Junaruska raised his hands high and said loudly, the next 3 days will be 3 days of carnival. My people, welcome our warriors with your warmest enthusiasm. Go home. The chief's call immediately received the most enthusiastic response. More than 3,000 warriors who guarded the tribe shouted Luluka again, and the tribesmen entrenched in the Guardian tribe of Waiwai cheered loudly. A group of high-level members of the Cree tribe were taken away by some warriors who guarded the tribe. As for how to deal with them, Stone Bear would not take care of them. In terms of Chief Junaruska's political wisdom, he must know how to deal with these people. Before these guys disappear, whether the Cree tribe can completely reconcile, They still count on these people. And these people may also let the high levels of the surrounding tribes know the attitude of some Cherokee tribes. The Grand Carnival began. The results of this expeditionary force can also be worthy of a 3-day Grand Carnival. Guardian, what plans do you have in the future? Chief Junaruska asked the stone bear as he walked on the carnival venue in the courtyard. The plan? Of course there is, but this requires your strong support from the chief. Shi Xiong held a leather bag in his hand, which contained high-grade spirits. Naturally, these spirits were taken by the royal court from Gaoshu tribe. Chief Junaruska nodded, but did not speak. He was waiting for Stone Bear to take the initiative to speak out the plan. Chief, the plan is actually very simple. We have now defeated the most powerful Cree, and there should be no possibility that the Cree can turn over. This is a huge shock to the surrounding tribes. Of course, we must also guard against these tribes uniting, whether they are Pointons, Missourians, or Kentucky, although they are far inferior in strength to us or the Cree. If they unite, it will be a headache. Chief Junaruska nodded silently. So, if we want to keep our current results, I think we must first act to be strong, before these tribes really unite. First take one or two of them www.wuxiaspa.com to weaken their strength, so even if they really unite, they are far from our opponents. Do you have any goals? Chief Junaruska stopped, his eyes shining brightly and asked. Yeah, Shi Xiong nodded. I think we should start with the Powhatan first. Why? It's very simple. The Supreme Sun once said to me that it is called distant and close attack. It means that the tribes far away from us, we should contact and win the tribes far away from us, and for the tribes close to us, we need he attacked without hesitation. Although the Powhatans have been beaten away by us, their position is right in the east of us. Now the south has been taken down by us. If we take the east again, then even if the entire rear area is completely worry-free. After a pause, Shi Xiong continued, but if I want to quickly take down the Powhatans, I need more support from the tribe. For example, the tribe needs to send more people to the Cree to appease and suppress the expedition, replaced by the army. Good. Chief Junaruska happily agreed to 14 Chapter 352, Return to the tribe. On the second day, Shi Xiong and Chief Junaruska carefully discussed how to make the Cree people back to their hearts, including the plan he had made before, and they all confided with Chief Junaruska. With the force of the expeditionary force, the entire Cree tribe can be easily suppressed, but suppressing the people of the Cree tribe does not mean that they can completely return to their hearts. The people's heart has been the most difficult thing since ancient times. Even if Jura Kreelu is sitting there, it may take dozens or even hundreds of years to integrate the nation. Therefore, although the Cree is a tribe with a population of only 100,000, it will take a long time to truly integrate this tribe. But it requires the entire Cherokee tribe to work hard. Without the support of the tribe, the expeditionary army alone will definitely not be able to make the Cree tribe completely united. So Shi Xiong did not hesitate to tell Chief Junaruska and the high-level members of the tribe of his plan. This kind of butt-wiping work is most suitable for them. As for Shi Xiong's plan, a group of high-level members of the tribe also very much agreed and recognized. After all, Shi Xiong's plans were formulated in combination with the numerous histories of the original historical time and space, and they were quite targeted. After discussing with a group of high-level members of the tribe for a whole day, on the third day, Shi Xiong took the expeditionary army and began to return. When escorting a group of senior members of the Cree to the Cherokee Palace, they once passed by the gate of the Gaoshu tribe. Although it is still hundreds of kilometers away from the Gaoshu tribe, it is still the gate anyway. But Shi Xiong and the others he did not return to the tribe. There is nothing wrong now. This group of people is naturally back home. Because of the lack of war horses, most of the expeditionary soldiers who came back with the Stone Bear still need to walk back to the Gaoshu tribe. The few people who have war horses, such as the Stone Bear, rushed without hesitation. Anyway, this is already the hinterland of the Cherokee tribe, and there is no possibility of any enemies. Even if there are enemies, the firearms in the hands of these expeditionary soldiers are not vegetarian. After a few days, Shi Xiong returned to the Gaoshu tribe with 7 or 8 warriors, and was welcomed by the tribe. This expedition, including the time to the high level of the Cree tribe, took nearly half a year. The people of the Gaoshu tribe are naturally very happy when they leave for the expedition in spring and come back in autumn. Tep, who had almost reached Shi Xiong's neck, was even more delighted. Even if the green sky lark it fears the most is coming, this guy dared to hold his father's thigh and grin at the green sky lark. Compared to Tep's domineering, Sheila is undoubtedly much gentler. This bitch, who has been feeding Tep with her own sex, is very well behaved and circulates around the old man. The tail turns like a windmill. And when the green sky lark appeared in front of Shi Xiong, in a daze, Shi Xiong seemed to see Bai Yun coming to him. The sluggishness of the stone bear did not affect the enthusiasm of this pungent Indian girl. She kicked the Tep who was grinning at her with a single kick, and then gave the stone bear a passionate hug, which caused the surrounding people to cry and cry. The stone bear, who had left the tribe for almost half a year, was also made a little false by the fiery body in his arms. His arms hesitated slightly, and finally he hugged the fiery body tightly. Green sky lark's thoughts Shi Xiong don't know why, but for all these reasons, he has been avoiding this fiery emotion. Do you still need to avoid it now? Do you need? Like? Shi Xiong himself doesn't know the answer, but he just feels that holding this body now seems very comfortable. I thought you couldn't come back. If you really can't come back, I don't know what to do. But fortunately, you are back, in my heart. The girl whispered in Shi Xiong's broad and thick arms, and Shi Xiong was moved inexplicably. The guardian returned, and several warriors from the tribe followed. It has been half a year since they started their expedition in spring. The people in the tribe are really looking forward to their return day and night. Now that they all come back, the grand carnival is naturally indispensable. Especially after they learned from Shi Xiong and the others that none of the warriors in the tribe had suffered any harm, the people of the tribe were even more happy. In the evening bonfire dinner, except for the soldiers on duty at the guard post, almost all the tribesmen of the entire tribe attended. Both men and women, young and old, danced cheerfully around the bonfire. Some guys even took off their shirts and were playing wrestling or gladiatorial fights shirtless. As for the children, they turned into tireless happy elves. Even Tep has become a star, well, a foodie star. Bonfire dinner or something, this guy likes it the most, because on this occasion, he can always eat all kinds of food without worrying about the green sky lark. In a corner far away from the campfire, high-level tribes such as Stonejong, Hangyun, Jeoniu, Dajiao, and Lilei gathered together, watching from a distance the people of the tribe around the campfire, all with contented smiles on their faces. Stone, are you still going out? Jeoniu took a sip of wine, and then fiercely gnawed a piece of meat from a roasted brown and oily lamb leg, and asked while chewing happily. I still have to go out for a while. Shi Xiong took a sip of wine and wiped the corners of his family's mouth. When I was in the royal court, I exchanged opinions with Chief Junaruska. The chief also meant to conquer as quickly as possible. The huge momentum created by the Carrie people has accelerated the conquest of the surrounding tribes. Is there a goal? Hong Yun asked. Although she is the high priest www.wuxiaspad.com, regardless of the war, she still cares about it. Yes, it's the point from the east. There is nothing to hide from this kind of thing, even if I don't say it now. After all the expeditionary troops come back, this matter can't be concealed. Why not Chikasha or Yuchi? Li Lei asked puzzledly. The Yuchi people are completely finished. We don't need to attack them. They may move away on their own before long. As for the Chikashas, it is not time for us to start. Bigfoot thought for a while, nodded and said, the Guardian is right. The Carrie people have been defeated by us. If we clean up the pointons, there will be no more to the east and south of us. We can threaten our tribe again, and we can concentrate all our forces on the west and north. Shi Xiong smiled and nodded. Uncle Bigfoot is right. Chief Junaruska and the newly appointed leader of the Red City Alliance also think so. I put forward my plan in the royal court in the same way, Doesn't that mean that you have to go on an expedition? The green skylark sitting beside the stone bear asked a little nervously. Ishikama touched the top of her head affectionately, did not answer her question, but stretched out her arm to wrap her waist. https://Genius only remembers the address of this site in 1 second. Mobile version reading URL, Chapter 353, Burst Bear Brigade. Time is a very magical thing. Is like the relationship between two people. Sometimes it becomes weaker with time, but sometimes it becomes stronger with time. The latter is the case between Stone Bear and Green Skylark. Green Skylark is not the same as her sister Baiyun. If Baiyun is like her name, like a cloud floating in the sky and hard to reach, then Green Skylark is a fire phoenix that landed on the ground, hot and enthusiastic. Shi Xiong is not a fool. How does Green Skylark not understand her thoughts? It's just that all his thoughts were occupied by Baiyun before. Even if Baiyun fragrant and disappear, Shi Xiong still can't forget, and his mind is full of Baiyun's figure. But even Shi Xiong himself didn't know when the Green Skylark's figure gradually overlapped with Baiyun's figure. At first, Shi Xiong was a little scared. He thought it was a betrayal of Baiyun, so he kept running away. But as time grew longer and longer, Shi Xiong realized that he seemed unable to escape, so he set out decisively. But time and space still cannot stop the two figures from fusing completely. Coupled with the fact that he was used to seeing life and death on the battlefield, Shi Xiong only felt that it didn't seem like a wise move for him to escape like this. After all, it is the new world of North America in the middle of the 18th century, not the modern society of later generations. That is the case. Instead of making both people suffer, why not make yourself comfortable? This is a social environment where people cannibalize. Even Shi Xiong himself cannot guarantee whether he will be alive the next moment. Life is too short. Why do you want to go against your heart and not have fun in time? Therefore, the next night Shi Xiong came back. The wooden house where he lived finally welcomed a mistress. This is something that the people like to see. In their eyes, a woman as beautiful and passionate as the Green Skylark is only worthy of a peerless hero like Master Guardian. As for the objections, for example, the Tep who has been lying outside the house all night. But is this guy's objection effective? It seems to have no effect at all. It's okay if I don't object, at least I can sleep with my father in the house. But this objection was terrible, and even the qualifications to sleep in the house were lost. And the old lady kicked it out. The days of killing and cutting suddenly disappeared, and the leisurely days with some other interesting little days returned to Shi Xiong. Even if you want to do something against the Poitans, you have to wait until all the expeditionary forces come back. Moreover, the expedition against the Cree was a great success. Chief Junaruska also valued the expeditionary army extremely, so he asked the Stone Bear to expand the expeditionary army as much as possible. This is inevitable. As the pace of foreign conquests is getting faster and bigger, the scale of expeditionary forces with new weapons will inevitably need to be expanded. Regardless of whether it is a tribe, a nation, or a country, if you want to continuously increase its own strength, the first expansion must be its own force. Therefore, the leisurely little days did not last too long. 2,000 Cherokee warriors from the north came to the High Tree tribe, and they came with a large amount of food. Although this year's summer harvest, the Gaoshu tribe has gained a huge harvest again. The tall granaries built in the tribe are enough to prove the harvest this summer, but if there is no external supply, the Gaoshu tribe's food alone for the harvest, it's okay to supply more than 2,000 expeditionary troops, but with 2,000 Cherokee fighters ready to train, it's a bit reluctant. Therefore, it is not impossible to expand the scale of the expeditionary force. Food must keep up. Fortunately, Chief Junaruska attaches great importance to this matter, so the 2,000 warriors who follow are enough for them to eat for 3 months. There is still half a month before the autumn harvest. Looking at the crops in the fields, Shi Xiong knows that this year is a richer harvest year than last year. The 1,600 expeditionary troops operating far away on the territory of the Cree tribe have not yet returned. They need to wait until other Cherokee fighters have passed by to take over before they can withdraw, but this did not delay Shi Xiong's training of these 2,000 recruits. After all, there were 500 expeditionary soldiers who came back with Shi Xiong. These soldiers broke up and divided into these recruits. After the conquest of the Cree tribe, these expeditionary soldiers are far from an elite veteran, but they can already be called qualified soldiers. With them, the strategy of taking the old and bringing the new together will make the training of these 2,000 recruits very easy. And during the 6 months of the Expeditionary Army's expedition to the Cree tribe, under the leadership of the 4 great alchemists, and with the help of Lieutenant Ferguson, the production of muskets in the tribe has now entered a high-speed stage. Now the number of muskets coming off the production line every day can reach 15, that is to say, if the musket production line goes all out to produce, 450 Ferguson rifles can be produced in 1 month. This production line was built by the 4 major alchemists based on the previous guidance of Shi Xiong, from metal smelting to barrel casting to the depiction of the rifling, as well as the processing of other parts and the final assembly of the gun. It has been formed, a set of streamlined operation methods. 50 or 60 people working on this production line. www.wuxiaspa.com can guarantee to produce such a number of Ferguson rifles in 1 day. The production of rifles has increased, so naturally the production of grenades and earthen grenades cannot fall. Now the tribe's arms has accumulated about 200 grenades and corresponding black powder grenades, as well as a large number of improved grenades. These weapons with huge explosive power are the real killers, as long as these 2,000 recruits are trained, and then combined with veterans. More than 4,000 expeditionary forces are enough to be divided into 4 regiment-level combat units and conquer 4 different targets at the same time. Yes, as the expeditionary force gets bigger and bigger, Shi Xiong intends to start using the army of later generations. Counting these 2,000 recruits, the number of the expeditionary force reached 4,100, which is almost equivalent to the organization of a brigade in later generations. The establishment of military combat units in later generations is obviously extremely reasonable, both in terms of management and command, so Shi Xiong decided to abandon the military establishment previously used and switch to a new military establishment. Brigade, regiment, battalion, company, platoon class. After these 2,000 recruits are all qualified, the entire expeditionary force will become a separate brigade. And Stone Bear also gave this brigade a very powerful name, Burst Bear Brigade. https://Genius only remembers the address of this site in 1 second. Mobile version reading URL, Chapter 354, Hank standing firm. Shi Xiong no longer presides over the training of 2,000 recruits. This kind of job can be done by the Bone Spear, the Mad Cow, and the Fierce Dog. As for the live ammunition training of the musket and grenadier, there are a few of them. There is no problem. 500 veterans plus the other expeditionary soldiers who will come back in the future will be 1-to-1 training. Training such a small number of recruits is absolutely no problem. The main reason is that Major Audrey Fogg is here, the British Army major who replaced Major Hank to trade refined salt with the Gaoshu tribe. Not only brought a lot of raw materials that the Stone Bears now urgently need, but also letter from Major Hank. Since Major Hank left the New World and returned to England more than half a year ago, he began to make new textile machinery according to the drawings provided by Shi Xiong. And he also opened a textile factory. It is very difficult to promote the new type of textile machinery, therefore, the best promotion method is undoubtedly to establish a textile factory by yourself so that those bosses who need textiles can see with their own eyes how efficient the new type of water-driven textile machinery is. The quality of cotton yarn and cotton cloth produced by this kind of textile machinery is so good. In this era, unlike later generations, the most valuable things are all handmade. In this era, handmade represents backwardness and low quality. Products produced by large machines are synonymous with high quality and high efficiency. In the words of Major Hank's letter, the bosses who came to visit saw the spectacular scenes during the production of the new textile machinery and the high-quality products. All of them went crazy, ordering new textile machinery, like a snowflake. He almost buried Major Hank. Major Hank is not the Hargreaves who invented the Jenny spinning machine, nor the Ackert who invented the hydro spinning machine, nor the Clompton who invented the mule machine in the future. Major Hank is the dignified Royal Army of the British Empire. The major officer of is far from being comparable to civilians like Hargreaves, Arkwright, and Crompton. Although Major Hank was not born in a noble family, his family is still a bit powerful in Southampton. Coupled with the fact that Major Hank has served as a soldier for so many years, he is also considered the #1 person in his hometown of Southampton. And Major Hank also made a lot of pounds when he operated refined table salt, so after he established this textile factory in his hometown of Southampton, no one dared to come and find fault. For example, the spinning mill established by Hargreaves, who invented the Jenny machine, was burned down by those home textile handicrafts, and his invention patent for the Jenny machine was taken away by others. This has never happened to Major Hank. Just kidding. When Major Hank opened a textile factory after returning to Southampton, he also hired more than a dozen security personnel who had retired from the Royal Army of the British Empire, according to what Stone Bear had told him. These security personnel are all serious veterans, and they have not retired for a long time. Not only are they fierce, they are also particularly capable of fighting. Relying on the handicraftsmen in the family workshops, there are 20 or 30 people who are not the opponents of these more than a dozen strong men. In addition, because of the increase in orders, a large amount of steel is needed to make new textile machinery. With these orders, Major Hank has a pretty good relationship with Southampton and even some steel tycoons in London. Now people say that there is another tycoon in Southampton. Of course Major Hank knew who gave it all, so when he stabilized, he immediately followed the instructions that Stone Bear had previously confessed, and tried his best to find all kinds of supplies for the big man on the other side of the ocean. Hank's letter said that many materials have been found, and now we are waiting to get more, and then get a ship to bring it over. In this regard, Shi Xiong is not in a hurry. Now he has enough weapons and equipment to deal with the surrounding Indian tribes. As for the independent war in the future, it is still early. The work of the past few years is enough for Shi Xiong to hoard enough raw materials through Major Hank's hands. Although Major Rodria Fogg succeeded Major Hank, this guy is a slick character. He also knows his immediate boss, the Colonel Jones stationed in Jamestown, who has passed these for more than a year. How much profit has been made from refined table salt? The most important thing is that through these refined table salt, Colonel Jones has been in contact with many domestic nobles. This kind of personal connection is the most important thing. It is something that cannot be bought with pounds. It is for this reason that Major Fogg attaches great importance to the salt trade with the Gaoshu tribe without any special explanation from Colonel Jones. In any case, he can also get a lot of benefits from the salt trade. The last time Major Fogg came, Stone Xiong and the expeditionary army were tossing on the territory of the Cree. He naturally did not see this big man. After coming to the Gaoshu tribe this time, he heard that the Cree tribe with a population of 100,000 in the south was actually conquered by this big man, and Major Fogg was also very surprised by this incident. As an army major who has lived in the New World for several years, Major Fogg naturally knows how difficult the native Indians are. A point with only 20 to 30,000 people can make the Royal Army of the British Empire a headache, not to mention a large tribe with hundreds of thousands of people. And this big man was able to conquer a large tribe of 100,000 people in less than half a year. This ability is known. Major Fogg naturally did not know that the Gaoshu tribe had a large number of musketeers www.wuxiaspa.com and did not know that Stone Bear still had a large number of grenadiers in his hand. So he didn't know what method the big man in front of him used to conquer a huge tribe in such a short period of time. It's better to say something about the musket. The Stone Bear, which can be called a strategic weapon in this era, will never let those European colonists know about it. Shi Xiong knows very well that, regardless of the fact that the British are doing a good deal with him, but once the news of the bullet-throwing barrel is revealed, the British will definitely slap them over immediately. They must find a way to get the bullet-throwing barrel. With the shrewdness of the British, When they knew that there was a weapon with an effective range of up to 600 meters and more powerful than a naval gun, they would definitely get this weapon at all costs. Ask yourself. If you are British, you will do the same. A powerful, small and exquisite weapon plays a decisive role in the foreign strategy of the entire country. Therefore, before the trading team led by Major Fogg arrives at the High Tree Tribe, all live ammunition training will be temporarily suspended. Chapter 355, Gift. Dear Guardian, I was just busy trading just now. I haven't had time to congratulate you. Congratulations on your team for defeating the Kree under your leadership. The transaction is almost done, and the Major Fu found it. This opportunity once again stood alone with Shi Xiong. Major, we have not only defeated the Kree, to be precise, we are now preparing to completely integrate that tribe. Once this process is over, then our Cherokee tribe will become the most powerful tribe in the southeast of the New World. Shi Xiong smiled and corrected the mistake in Major Fu's words. Then, I would like to congratulate you even more. Our British Empire also hopes to see a stable southeast, so that we can grow food and tobacco in this area with peace of mind, and can also transport more things here. Dear Guardian, a stable southeastern region of the New World is something we both like to see, and your tribe, the mighty Cherokee tribe, is also the best strategic ally of our British Empire. We would love to see it. This large area is controlled by your clan, so transactions between us will become safer, right? Haha, Major, I like to hear what you say, and what you said fits my mind. Major Fu laughed, then he waved, and then a British soldier ran over holding a wooden box. Dear Guardian, in order to express Colonel Jones and my congratulations to you, I was entrusted by Colonel Jones to dedicate this handgun made by Master John Peter to you. I hope you will like it. John Peter, is that Mr. John Christopher Peter? Shi Xiong asked with a touch of surprise on his face. Yes, it is the Master Peter from the Carlsbad area. Although Master Peter has passed away, this gun was built by himself more than 40 years ago and has been collected by Colonel Jones. This time Jones the Colonel learned that you led the army to defeat the Kree, who had colluded with the Spaniards. The Colonel was very happy and took out his long-cherished pistol as a congratulatory gift. I hope you will like it. Shi Xiong took the exquisite wooden box with a smile, and then opened it in the slightly distressed eyes of Major Fogg, and a pistol more than half a meter long appeared in front of him. Although he didn't look directly at Major Fogg, Shi Xiong could feel the reluctance in the Major's heart. Obviously, this gun should be in the collection of the Major, not in the collection of Colonel Jones. In this era when communication is basically based on roaring, the news of the Expeditionary Force's defeat of the Kree will definitely not spread to the British colony so quickly, so it is impossible for the Colonel Jones stationed in Jamestown to know this. Besides, with the greedy character of Colonel Jones, how could he be willing to give such a precious pistol as a gift to himself? This is obviously the reason that the coming Major Fogg, after learning the news, took the initiative to take out the pistol he had collected as a gift, and gave it to him on the excuse that it was arranged by Colonel Jones. Even Stone Bear had to admit that this Major Fogg was indeed a very good person. The greedy Colonel Jones in Jamestown was really lucky to have such a capable man. I have to say that this pistol is really a rare good gun in this era. The aforementioned Mr. John Christopher Peter is a famous gunsmith living in the British colony, and he has produced many beautiful and powerful guns in his hands. The Carlsbad area of this era does not refer to the Carlsbad near San Diego, California, but an area near Jamestown, where Mr. Peter lived during his lifetime. He is a famous gunsmith who is well known throughout the British colony. The long or short guns he created by himself are all fine items that people are vying to collect. The same is true for the pistol in front of me. Well, maybe it is not appropriate to call this gun pistol, it is more appropriate to call it short gun, but in this era, this short gun is an out-and-out pistol. The length of this gun is about 540 centimeters, which is 0.54 meters in length. This length can be regarded as a long gun in the face of real pistols that are only 20 centimeters in later generations. But because of the limitation of production technology, in this era, Such a long gun is completely suitable for the scope of a pistol. Shi Xiong stretched out his hand and grabbed the gun. Only then did he feel that the weight of the gun was definitely more than 8 kgs, which was heavier than the new Ferguson rifle. However, this gun is indeed exquisitely made. The tail of the and the wooden support on the upper part of the trigger ring are covered with exquisite silver patterns, which looks very artistic. The caliber of the gun is about 14.5 millimeters, which is similar to the caliber of most rifles of this era. In other words, the lead bullet used in this gun can be used in common with the lead bullet used in the Brown Bess rifle. The loading method of this gun is very cleverly designed. It adopts a handle design similar to the later double-barrel shotgun. When the lock of the gun body is released, the front part of the gun body is folded down and the barrel opens because the hammer is at the back. The gun body, so the bullet can be installed after exposing the chamber. This design is undoubtedly an extremely advanced loading design in this era, in some respects, even more advanced than the rotating locking mechanism of the Ferguson rifle. It's a pity that in this era, the use of this loading design requires a high degree of finishing ability to ensure the airtightness of the ammunition chamber, otherwise the ammunition will leak when it is launched. Therefore, this gun is destined to be built slowly by hand, and cannot form the possibility of mass production. At least this is the case in this era. The firing device of the pistol is no different from the flintlock gun currently used, but this gun can obviously not only be installed afterwards, but also can be installed beforehand according to the situation. www.wuxiaspa.com because it is under the barrel equipped with a cleaning bar, which shows that in some necessary cases, the gunner cannot use the post-loading method to load the ammunition, but can use the front-loading method to load the ammunition. This is because the overall length of the gun is only 0.54 meters. And it is also very convenient to use the front-loading method. Shi Xiong erected the gun, looked at the barrel, and found that there were 8 rifled lines in the barrel of this gun. Even Shi Xiong has to admit that this beautiful-looking pistol is not only beautiful in appearance, but also has something inside. This is a good gun. I like it very much. Major, thank Colonel Jones for me and express my gratitude after I go back, Shi Xiong said with a smile. Although the performance of this gun may not be as good as the handgun that I built by myself, if this gun can be kept, future generations will have another collectible item. The stone bear in the previous life remembered that at an auction in Germany, a pistol built by Mr. Peter was sold for 64,000 euros. The reason why Shi Xiong knew the name of John Peter was also based on that auction. Chapter 356, Seed. Just when Shi Xiong and Major Fogg had a very happy conversation, in the peninsula far southeast of the New World, known as Florida by the Spaniards, several Spaniards were sitting and discussing with several local aboriginals. It can be seen from their clothing that the status of these Spaniards is not low, and those indigenous people are the leaders of some tribes, and there is even a guy wearing colorful feather headdress able to wear colorful feather headdress. In the custom of North American Indians, there is only one chief of the tribe. The subsequent naming of Florida, the United States, is a very pure Spanish naming. In 1512, the Spaniard Juan Ponce de Leon led his fleet across the vast Atlantic Ocean and finally came to this beautiful peninsula. And when Juan came to Florida, it happened to be Easter that year, and that day was Sunday again. Such a day was called Pascua Florida in Spain at the time, meaning flowering day. So at that time Juan named this peninsula that Europeans had never set foot on Florida, and then this name has always been continued until it became Florida. Even in the middle of the 18th century, before the Battle of Trafalgar, Spain was still the well-deserved hegemon of Europe, and no one in the Atlantic dared to provoke it. However, the Spaniards did not occupy North America. After occupying South America and Central America, their sphere of influence in North America was only limited to the Gulf Coast generation. Florida is also the inherent sphere of influence of the Spaniards. In Florida, there is also a relatively large tribe, the Semino tribe. In fact, the Seminoes, like the Yuchis, were separated from the powerful Cree tribe, but the Seminoes separated from the Cree tribe earlier, and they occupied the more prosperous Florida. The peninsula, So the Semino people have developed very well over the years. They have formed a tribe with their own culture and social system. The Seminoes occupy the Florida Peninsula, so they can deal with the Spaniards and the British for a long time. They not only do business with the Spaniards, but also with the British. As to whether they have business with the French, Germans, and Dutch, there are also Portuguese trades, which is not known. However, in terms of the temperament of the Seminoes, it is estimated that they will not miss such a good opportunity. After all, the position that Florida occupies is really great. Because of long-term business dealings with European colonists, Semino people were more open-minded. In this era, they are even taking in a large number of black slaves who escaped from the plantation, thus forming a group of black Seminoes. To put it bluntly, the Seminoes are actually a group of clowns with no standpoint. Whoever gives more benefits, they will not hesitate to favor whom. It is precisely because of this temperament of the Seminoes that after the founding of the United States, the Americans launched an encirclement and suppression of the Seminoes in the 1920s and 30s of the 19th century. After a total of 3 times for half a century, in the war, the Seminoes were finally defeated and deported to the area west of the Mississippi River, and finally into Oklahoma. Of course, the Seminoes were expelled to the west of the Mi River and even into Oklahoma. That would have to wait until a century later. In this age, the Seminoes are the indisputable overlords of Florida. Even the Spaniards turned to the Seminoes for help in Florida. But today, these people get together. Obviously it is not the Spaniards who ask for help from the Seminoes, but the Seminoes want to ask for help from the Spaniards. General, our tribe needs your help now. Our mother, the Cree in the north, was captured by the Cherokees, and our chief was taken away by the Cherokees. Now, those Cherokees are rampant on our motherland. We need to drive those Cherokees out of that land. We need to rescue our mothers from the Cherokee rule. Come out. In a large room in a Spanish fortress near Jacksonville, the current Semino chief Omar said with an anxious look on his face to a 50-year-old Spaniard sitting in front of him. Judging from the epaulets on the Spanish costume and the medals pinned on the chest, this is a Spanish rear admiral and a nobleman. The fortress they were talking to was located on the bank of the St. John's River not far from Caroline Castle. In 1645, more than 100 years ago, the French took the lead in establishing a colony on the banks of the St. John's River, with the Caroline Castle at its core. But then the Spaniards extended their tentacles here. They defeated the French and destroyed Caroline Castle. This area fell into the hands of the Spaniards. In that era, the French did not dare to provoke the powerful Spaniards, and the French could only swallow their anger about the fact that Caroline Castle was destroyed. Although Caroline Castle was destroyed, the Spaniards did not let go of this rich land. The Spaniards rebuilt a military fortress not far from the ruins of Caroline Castle, and then firmly controlled this area, making it one of the few bridgeheads that the Spaniards can control in the New World of North America. In order to protect this place, the Spaniards even sent a fleet to garrison here, and the highest commander is the 50-year-old Spanish man opposite Chief Amara. His name is Celeste Carlos, and he is a major general in the Royal Spanish Navy. Major General Carlos faced Omala's request and did not directly agree to it. Instead, he smiled and asked, "My dear Chief Omala, it's not impossible for our Spanish Royal Army to be dispatched www.wuxiaspa.com, but you know, once our army is dispatched, the logistical supplies can be very large, and this is not Central and South America, this is Florida. Our logistics does not have much advantage here." So, Major General Carlos's left index finger tapped rhythmically on the table, adding a touch of tension to the negotiation. "This is easy to say. Food, drinking water, including the necessary guides, our tribe can be responsible," Chief Amara said simply. "Furthermore, I can allow your troops to continue to station north afterwards, even if you wish. The southern foot of the Blue Mist can be the area where your troops are stationed, and our people will start more transactions with you." "Is this true?" Major General Carlos's eyes squinted slightly. "Of course it is true. What I said has never broken my promise," Chief Omar said very positively. "Of course, I need your army to drive all the Cherokee people to the north of the Blue Mist. If there are some disobedient people in my mother clan, I also hope that they can disappear." A look of disdain flashed in Major General Carlos's eyes, but he still smiled and nodded vigorously. Chapter 357, Spanish Plan. Regarding Chief Omar's request, although Major General Carlos was very disdainful in his heart, he had to admit that the request made by the Indian chief was precisely the breakthrough that the Spanish military needed most. At this time, the entire European continent is in an extremely strange state. Even Spain, the most powerful at present, does not dare to provoke the sensitive nerves of various countries. The British and the French have just finished fighting a war between human brains and dog brains. Although the British have won, everyone knows that the British have also won tragically. As the loser, the French are not as Ontario as they thought. They are in the New World colonies in North America, in East India, and in Africa. They are constantly making small moves. The Prussians, Dutch, Portuguese, and Belgians are all staring on the sidelines, wishing that the two countries would fight again, so that they would have more chances to reach out into the New World. As the most powerful country in Europe, Spain is currently afraid to act rashly. The fertility of the New World has long made other European countries jealous. Spain occupies Central and South America alone, and robs huge profits from that vast continent every year. Who can not be jealous? But jealous, no one dared to challenge Spain's military power in the Atlantic. The Battle of Trafalgar, which changed the entire continental structure and even the world structure, would take half a century before it took place. Britain replaced Spain as the world. The most powerful country needs to endure another half a century. In this age, the powerful Spanish Navy is the foundation that guarantees Spain's sole occupation of Central and South America. Spain also knows that all European countries now hate themselves for monopolizing Central and South America, so Spain has never extended its tentacles into the new continent of North America. Well, in other words, they didn't dare to blatantly expand their power to this vast and fertile continent, because the Spaniards knew very well that once they did this, other countries in the continent would definitely unite against themselves. The Spaniards are arrogant, but they are not arrogant enough to dare to oppose all the countries of the entire continent. Therefore, although the Spaniards want to expand their sphere of influence in the new continent of North America, they do not want to offend other European countries too much. Therefore, this is a very sensitive era. As a Rear Admiral of the Royal Navy, Carlos is naturally aware of the current situation. But he also shoulders an important responsibility, that is, as far as possible without irritating other countries in the continent, as far as possible to expand Spain's sphere of influence from the Gulf of Mexico to the northern part of the New World in North America. But it is not so easy to accomplish this. The Mississippi River Basin is controlled by the French. Although the defeated French ceded this large area to the British after the 7 Years' War, the French who lived there would not easily take such a large area. What was left to the British for nothing? The colonists of the two countries surrounded the areas on both sides of the Mi River, and there was bound to be a long-term contest. Of course, this kind of contest is limited to the colonists, and the forces of the two countries will not intervene. The French are very cunning. They know it is difficult to resist the British, so they are willing to secretly transfer New Orleans to the Spanish, in an attempt to resist the British through the power of the Spanish. The Spaniards are not fools. They naturally understand what the French think, so even now, the governor of New Orleans, who is already a Spaniard, has not come to take office. But time will not last long. Major General Carlos knew that the domestic governor sent to New Orleans was about to take office, and the area at the mouth of the Mi River would soon belong to Spain. However, just a single New Orleans is obviously difficult to support, so the above asked itself to open another gap from the east, that is, Florida, to form a solid base, so that it can echo New Orleans in the west and bring the Spanish in North America. The sphere of influence of the New World was completely determined. But it is not so easy to open a gap north of Florida. Originally north of Florida was the British colony of that shameless King George II of the United Kingdom, and that George II who had just died a few years ago even shamelessly named the colony Georgia after him. In other words, This area north of Florida is already the territory of the British. Except for the local indigenous people, it is difficult for foreign forces to enter the colony named Georgia. It is not impossible to enter by force. After all, the Spanish force is here. The powerful Spain is not as cowardly as the French, and the powerful Spain cannot be resisted by the British. But the problem is that if you really want to invade the British colonies with such a big fanfare, it will definitely trigger resistance from other European countries, and it is not impossible for those countries to unite and fight against the Great Spain. This is not something Major General Carlos would like to see. So he has been waiting for a suitable opportunity, waiting for an opportunity that other countries cannot refuse to enter the northern region. Now, the opportunity has come inadvertently. If the local indigenous people ask for support from the Spaniards, then even the British have nothing to say. After all, although Georgia is the sphere of influence of the British, it is also the residence of the local indigenous people. Especially there's a strong indigenous tribe living there, a Cree with 100,000 people. The indigenous tribe alone is enough to make colonists, including the British, dare not act rashly, and the Spanish dare not easily offend this powerful tribe. But now, this powerful tribe was defeated by the indigenous tribe further north, and the Seminoles who had separated from that powerful tribe invited themselves to help their mother clan. This was an excellent opportunity. Major General Carlos certainly knows what Chief Omala said about if my mother is some disobedient people, I also hope they can disappear. This ambitious chief obviously has other things too. The idea of www.wuxiaspa.com. The Semino do not want to rescue their mother. They are coveting the rich land and large population of the Cree. They want to replace the dominance of the mother clan in this area and become the new hegemon in this area. No matter how high-sounding the chief of the Semino tribe said, Major General Carlos could see clearly what this guy was thinking. However, this is indeed a good opportunity out of the box. If you can take advantage of this opportunity to reach out into the land controlled by the British, even the British can't say anything else. Especially when you are helping the local indigenous people and then fight the powerful tribe in the north, then whether it is the British or the French, it is better to explain I am helping the hard-working and kind-hearted race the Minoans have revenge. Well, as for the Cherokee tribe, although they defeated the Cree tribe, in front of the Spanish artillery and musket, can the Cherokee tribe have any ability to resist? No, certainly not. Major General Carlos thought so. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 358, Smallpox. Smallpox, Major, can't such a delicious drink make you happy? Shi Xiong smiled and touched the glass again with Major Fogg, and asked after taking a sip. Since Major Fogg led his team to the Gaoshu tribe this time, Shi Xiong has clearly felt that this young major seems to have something on his mind, and he always inadvertently reveals a strong look of worry. Major Fogg looked at Shi Xiong, and the inadvertent worries that had just been revealed in his eyebrows disappeared instantly. He smiled, raised the glass and drank the wine in the glass. Then he grabbed a bunch of beef skewers, chewing hard, and slowly said, "My Lord Guardian, my hometown is in London." Canterbury, to the east, is a very quiet seaside port on the south bank of the Thames estuary. Shi Xiong thought for a while, and finally shook his head helplessly. Regarding the geography of the United Kingdom, he only knew about London, Southampton, Birmingham, Manchester and other big cities, such as Cambridge and Oxford. The university is very famous. As for what Major Fogg said about Canterbury, he really didn't know. But, some time ago I received a letter from my family saying that the horrible smallpox disease has begun to spread again. It is said that there has been a mess in London, and there seems to be a smallpox patient in my hometown Canterbury. Now, my hometown, people are panicking over there. Smallpox, Shi Xiong murmured in his mouth, and frowned closely. Audrey, are you sure that smallpox has become popular again? Major Fogg frowned and shook his head and said, I didn't see it with my own eyes, but the letter from my family said so, so I can't be sure now. But, Master Guardian, this is smallpox. Last time, smallpox, the time when the empire became popular, is only more than 30 years away. At that time, I was still young. It is said that during the smallpox epidemic, more than 200,000 people lost their lives. Shi Xiong sighed slightly. From the era of the information explosion in later generations, how can he not understand the horror of smallpox? Regardless of later generations, smallpox, a malignant infectious disease that has been ranked in the top 3 in human history, has been completely eliminated. But in this era, in Europe in the middle of the 18th century, smallpox is indeed a horror comparable to the death sickle exists. In later generations, some people have counted the several malignant infectious diseases with the highest number of deaths in human history. The flu ranked first, the Black Death ranked second, and smallpox ranked third. Let's not talk about the flu, let alone the past. Even in the era before the stone bear crossed, there is no good way for humans to take the flu. There are so many people who died of flu in the entire history of human civilization, and there is no way to count them. Anyway, the Spanish flu alone caused 40 million deaths, which is 4 times the number of deaths in World War I! The Black Death, a name that sounds scary, is actually the plague. The most famous Black Death in history broke out in the Sicily Islands in Italy in the middle of the 14th century. The disease broke out in the Sicily Islands in 1347, and then swept across Europe in just 3 years, and caused 2,000 in the following 2 decades. 5 million Europeans died. As long as the patient has this disease, there is no possibility of cure. There are many dark spots on the skin and the death process is extremely painful, so it is called the Black Death. The disease made a comeback in Europe many times in the following 300 years. Scholars of later generations estimated that as many as 300 million people died from the plague, and this number accounted for half of the entire European population. It should be understood that the number of people who died in World War II accounted for only about 5% of the European population, and a Black Death caused the loss of half of Europe's population. It took a full 150 years for the whole of Europe to recover. The power of death. In addition to the flu and the Black Death, smallpox is also discolored. No one knows exactly where the vicious infectious disease of smallpox came from. Some people say that this terrible infectious disease existed in Egypt as early as the 3rd millennium AD, because smallpox was seen on the mummies of Egyptian pharaohs unearthed in later generations. Scar underneath. Some people also say that this disease originated from India. Whether it was the smallpox virus in ancient China or Europe, it was spread from India. But no matter how smallpox appeared, there is no denying that this infectious disease is definitely a terrorist infectious disease comparable to the Black Death. The number of deaths from smallpox in other parts of the world is no longer counted, but in Europe alone, as of the 18th century, as many as 150 million Europeans have died from this terrible infectious disease. When the malignant infectious disease of natural flower began to erupt in Europe in the Middle Ages, this terrifying malignant infectious disease left an indelible mark to Europe. At that time, in Europe, on average, 1 in 5 people had a pink face, which was the mark left by smallpox. Even the supreme kings could not escape bad luck. King Louis XV of France, Queen Mary II of England, King Joseph I of Germany, and Tsar Peter II of Russia were all killed by smallpox. What is even more terrifying is that when the Spanish conquered the Indians in Central and South America, they did not use artillery and muskets, but the smallpox virus. It is said that when the Spaniards first landed in South and Central America, the force of the Spaniards was far from comparable to the armed forces of the local Indians, and even the Spaniards were once beaten by the Indians. We must know that there were only a few hundred Spaniards at the time. Read www.whocanshoe.com. And in Central and South America there were as many as 30 million native Indians. In this case, the Spanish invaders began to think of tricks. They gave the blankets used by smallpox patients to the Indians, and smallpox broke out on the road. Then the mumps, measles, cholera, gonorrhea, and yellow fever spread from Europe. In the end, many infectious diseases, led by smallpox, made the Indians of Central and South America. The number of people has plummeted to less than 1 million. It is no exaggeration to say that the reason why the Spaniards can finally dominate Central and South America is relying on this invisible but infinitely powerful smallpox virus. Therefore, smallpox is definitely a very terrifying and malignant infectious disease. Shi Xiong knew this from beginning to end, although he also knew that a smallpox pandemic broke out in Europe in the 18th century, and he also knew that during the smallpox pandemic, a large number of Europeans died from this disease. Even the current French king, King Louis XV, would eventually die after being infected with smallpox 8 years later. But he really didn't expect the news about smallpox appeared so early. Chapter 359, Human Pox Vaccination. Major Adrian Fogg, who was immersed in worry, inadvertently saw the Guardian with the same solemn face. "Master Guardian, do you also know smallpox?" Major Fogg was a little curious. In his opinion, the native Indians on the New World, especially the native Indians in the New World of North America, shouldn't be aware of this malignant infectious disease. "Well, of course I know this kind of malignant infectious disease." Shi Xiong nodded, but he is a soul wearer, with countless various information and technologies from later generations in his mind, but he can face this kind of horror. He still had some scalp numbness when he was suffering from a malignant infectious disease. This kind of malignant infectious disease that can be infected through droplets or direct contact with the human body is really overbearing. In contrast, SARS, which has brought a huge panic to China land in later generations, is almost like a child's house. Although the fatality rate of smallpox is not as terrible as the Black Death, the fatality rate of this malignant infectious disease is also as high as 40%. The most important thing is that this disease is more lethal to children and women. It is really worthy of being called women and children killers. "Master Guardian, do you have any way to deal with this disease?" Major Fogg asked after hesitating. Major Fogg also knew a lot about the tall man of this man. He even knew that the Guardian, who was once a fool but now seems to be all-knowing, had been guided by the highest deity believed by the Indians. Although Major Fogg didn't really believe this, as a devout believer, at this time, he couldn't help but believe it. Shi Xiong hesitated slightly. Although smallpox is an incurable disease in this era, how could he not know how to treat smallpox from later generations? Well, it seems to be more accurate to use the term smallpox prevention. But for a malignant infectious disease such as smallpox, prevention is actually equal to treatment. But the question is, how to effectively prevent smallpox? Do you really want to tell this, Major Fogg? Although maintaining limited cooperation with the British is a big guiding ideology, this method of preventing smallpox is an absolute strategic level weapon. Shouldn't the method of preventing smallpox be mentioned now? To be honest, Shi Xiong is really uncertain. If you consider it from a personal perspective, Shi Xiong absolutely doesn't mind taking out this method. After all, once this method is taken out, it will save thousands of women and children. But the problem is that the stone bear does not represent an individual now. There are millions of North American Indians standing behind him. And now this is a relatively delicate time. Once Europeans, especially the British, have now mastered the method to prevent smallpox, will the independent war that break out in a few years' time continue as scheduled? Will the British, who were defeated in a single-handed war, still fail? Although it was not the smallpox virus that helped the Americans defeat the British in the single-handed war, it was a malaria transmitted by the Aedes mosquito. But at the most critical moment of the single-handed war, the most serious smallpox broke out on the European continent, and most of the British soldiers' families were in the UK. At home, these fighters cared about their families and had no intention of fighting, which was also an important reason why Britain lost the war. "Master Guardian, do you have any way to prevent smallpox?" Major Fogg is a personal spirit. Shi Xiong hesitated. He immediately realized something, and asked excitedly. Shi Xiong sighed slightly, then asked after biting his molars, "Adrian, do you know how to inoculate human pox?" Humanpox, the kind of prevention of smallpox spread from the ancient East? Major Fogg was taken aback, and then asked back. "Yes, It was the kind of acne vaccination that was spread to the United Kingdom through your wife Montague, the ambassador of the British Empire in Turkey, more than 40 years ago. Shi Xiong stared at Major Fogg with his eyes firmly on him, said. Fogg hesitated a little. I have heard of that kind of human pox vaccination method, but it is said that that method does not seem to be safe, and there is a chance of being infected, and it seems that the probability is not low. If a healthy person is vaccinated that kind of human pox and infected with smallpox, this Major Fogg's worry is not unreasonable. At the beginning of the 18th century, China's vaccinations spread to Turkey, and after hearing the news, Montague, the wife of the British ambassador to Turkey, decided to inoculate his son with this type of acne. Because Madame Montague's brother died of smallpox and she herself had contracted the disease, so she was very afraid of smallpox. She was afraid that her son would also be infected with smallpox, so she asked her son to be vaccinated with this kind of human pox under the care of the embassy surgeon. Fortunately, the vaccination was successful. After Mrs. Montague returned to England, she strongly advocated vaccination, but she was met by people from the social and religious circles oppose and resist. Under heavy resistance, Mrs. Montague had to use herself and the Princess of Wales Caroline Ansford's personal friendship, ask her to persuade the king to implement human pox vaccination. With the support of King George I, a technology lacking theoretical support, the technique began to spread in rational Britain. However, although human pox vaccination protects the lives of many people, the vaccinated people still have a 2% death rate. After Mrs. Montague returned to England, she strongly advocated vaccination, but she was met by people from the social and religious circles oppose and resist. Under heavy resistance, Mrs. Montague had to use herself and the Princess of Wales Caroline Ansford's personal friendship, ask her to persuade the king to implement human pox vaccination. After Mrs. Montague returned to England, she strongly advocated vaccination, but she was met by people from the social and religious circles oppose and resist. Under heavy resistance, later, after Mrs. Montague returned to the UK, she began to vigorously promote vaccination in China, but she encountered opposition and resistance from the social and religious circles. Under heavy resistance, the human pox vaccination method did not progress smoothly in the United Kingdom at the beginning. As a last resort, she used her personal friendship with Princess Caroline Ansford of Wales to ask the princess to persuade the king to promote someone acne vaccination. At that time, King George I of England became interested in this kind of pox vaccination, so with the support of the king www.wuxiaspa.com, this vaccination technique, which lacked theoretical support, began to spread rationally from the UK. However, there is no theoretical support for human pox vaccination, so although this kind of human pox vaccination saves and protects the lives of many British people, it still has a 2% to 5% casualty rate. This is why Major Fogg is worried. But now that he has decided not to spread the news of vaccinia for the time being, Shi Xiong can only find a way on this kind of vaccinia. Adrian, I know your concerns, but human pox vaccination is currently the only vaccination that can prevent smallpox. Although there is a certain fatality rate, it is better than doing nothing. Compared to that, the mortality rate of a few percent, and the mortality rate of nearly half after smallpox infection is undoubtedly even more terrifying. I think you should be able to make a wise choice. Major Adrian Fogg stunned again when he heard the words, and then fell into entanglement with a wry smile. Didn't he know that what Shi Xiong said was very reasonable? But it involves their own family members. Everyone wants vaccination to be a 100% successful method, rather than a mortality rate of a few percent. Chapter 360, Vaccinia. Major Fogg left, with a convoy full of dang cargo. The refined salt produced by the Gaoshu tribe is naturally large. But in addition to a large amount of refined salt, the two kinds of goods, high-grade liquor and cigarettes, have also pulled a lot. Major Fogg knew very well that compared to refined table salt, the high-grade liquor and cigarettes produced by the Gaoshu tribe have higher profits, especially the white cigarettes, which are simply astonishing. The purchase price of this kind of cigarettes in a cardboard box is no more than 1 shilling a box, 30 sticks. but for external sale, the price of a box of 10 shillings will make those wealthy smokers rush. Even if it is a box that was sold at a sky-high price of £1, and there were many noble smokers robbed it. Even if the profits of liquor and salt add up, they are less than half of this cigarette. This thing is the high-profit goods that can make people crazy. If it weren't for the fact that Gaoshu was unable to produce more cigarettes, and the people of this tribe seemed to be a group of smokers, Major Fogg really wanted to take away all the cigarettes produced by this tribe. I just don't know how this cigarette is made. That kind of thin and tough cigarette paper is really rare. Now many alchemists in Jamestown are trying to make this kind of cigarette paper, but none of them can succeed. There are also people who try to use ordinary paper to make this kind of cigarettes, but the ghost knows how the people of the Gaoshu tribe make these cigarettes so exquisite. Anyway, the cigarettes made by those in Jamestown who tried to make cigarettes are so terrible. If Jamestown can master this method of making cigarettes, several people, including himself, will definitely become the top rich in a short time. Major Fogg, who was sitting in an ox cart, sighed, took out a box of cigarettes, hesitated for a moment, was not willing to smoke, but he still took out some shredded tobacco and a piece of hard yellow paper, and began to make handmade cigarettes. Although the alchemists in Jamestown did not produce cigarettes, this kind of imitation and crude version of handmade cigarettes began to become popular in Jamestown. Although this kind of handmade cigarette is quite horrible, it is much more convenient than smoking a pipe, so this kind of handmade cigarette with a thin front side and a thick back side quickly became popular. Seeing Major Fogg's motorcade leave, Shi Xiong's brows gradually frowned. Although Major Fogg brought a lot of things that were in short supply, it was nothing compared to the smallpox the Major had previously proposed. Smallpox has the same lethality to people anywhere in the world, whether it is a Chinese, a European or an Indian native of the New World. As long as they contract this horrible malignant infectious disease, the mortality rate is 40%. Basically it can't run. At present, there is also China and Europe. Some people's pox vaccination can prevent smallpox, but on the New World side, the local indigenous people don't even have human pox vaccination. How can they resist the coming smallpox? When the Spaniards first invaded Central and South America more than 260 years ago, they killed more than 20 million Indians living in Central and South America by relying on the vicious infectious disease of smallpox in just 100 years. Smallpox, a vicious infectious disease, became the #1 executioner of the Indian massacre. In the original historical time and space, when the war alone broke out, the reason why the Americans were defeated by the British troops in the first place was largely because of the raging smallpox. When the War of Independence broke out, it was the peak of the raging smallpox in Europe and America. However, the British Army has been vaccinated due to pox, so few people died from smallpox in the British Army, and the British Army is not worried about smallpox infection. But the American Army is not good, because they are a rebellious army, so the pox hospitals for vaccinations, in the 13 colonies in North America were not open to the American Army, so in the early stage of the war alone, American soldiers died in large numbers because of the ravages of smallpox. The most terrible thing is that once smallpox begins to wreak havoc, no American soldier can insist on resisting the British. The fear of smallpox has long destroyed the psychological defenses of these American soldiers. Their fear of smallpox is far greater than resisting the British. It is precisely for this reason that the American Army, which occupied the right time and place, was beaten by the British Army in the middle and early stages of the Independent War. But later, as human pox vaccination began to spread in the American Army, the harm of smallpox to the American Army became less and less, and the local Aedes mosquitoes began to spread malaria in the British Army. The American Army turned defeat into victory, and then established the United States, the world's largest country in the future. Although the smallpox is still some distance away from the Gaoshu tribe, if the stone bear wants to join the new continent of North America, then contact with smallpox is inevitable. Therefore, We must prepare to vaccinate the tribe's warriors from smallpox from now on. Humanpox is definitely not acceptable. Although humanpox vaccination is very mature now, this method lacks theoretical support after all, and it also has a certain fatality rate. Even with the most advanced water vaccination method, this humanpox vaccination method has a fatality rate of more than 2%. Shi Xiong didn't want his soldiers to die in this vaccination method without knowing it, so he had to come up with a smallpox vaccination method that had no fatality rate. Now whether it is in China or Europe, the method of vaccination for humanpox is actually a very dangerous vaccination method. Humanpox was invented by Chinese people. www.wuxiaspa.com. The principle is to use the scabs on patients infected with smallpox virus to vaccinate ordinary people. This method of fighting with poison is indeed the correct vaccination method, but because the acne scabs on smallpox patients are very toxic, many normal people will not only be ineffective after vaccination, but will be infected with smallpox and eventually lead to death. Later, after a long period of research, Huaxia doctors developed many less toxic vaccination methods. For example, use underwear for children with smallpox to wear for 2 or 3 days for healthy children who have not developed acne. For example, take fresh acne serum from smallpox children and stuff them with cotton dipped into the vaccinated object. The nostrils can cause acne and achieve the purpose of preventive vaccination. Acne slurry method. For example, the smallpox scab is ground into a very fine powder and blown into the nostrils to achieve the purpose of preventing smallpox by inoculating. Acne dry seedling method, and the water seedling method with the least toxicity and the highest safety. But no matter which method is used, this method of using humanpox to inoculate is fatal. The humanpox vaccination method cannot be said to be bad, but compared to the vaccinia vaccination method that has been proven and eventually eliminated the malignant infectious disease of smallpox, the humanpox vaccination method is obviously not enough. That's right. Shi Xiong intends to take precautions now and start researching the vaccinia vaccination technique for vaccination against smallpox. Chapter 361, Xiazhangtai and number 039:S Future Scientific Research Results. Boss, are you kidding? You said that what you extract from this cow is immune to the smallpox virus? In the farm on the edge of the Gaoshu tribe, the French alchemist Jean Auguste was standing with a head that had just been produced. The female bison asked with an unbelievable expression, and his wife Bibera also had a ghostly expression on her face. Why, don't you believe that something extracted from this cow can be immune to smallpox? Shi Xiong asked the two men with a playful look. Auguste looked at the female bison that was leisurely grazing, and then at the seemingly omnipotent boss. He hesitated for a long time before he said, "Boss, if someone else says that, I must put the cow dung on the ground into his mouth, but since you said so with certainty, I think it's more reliable." His wife, the honest Bibera, also nodded sharply. Shi Xiong was very comfortable being slapped by this little flattery, and laughed loudly. "Boss, something on this cow can really be immune to smallpox. Don't look at the stone bear that Auguste had just shot," but as a rigorous alchemist, he still proposed his own doubt. "If what the Supreme Sun pointed me is correct, then there is a substance in these female bisons that can be effectively immune to smallpox virus. Here, look at the smallpox on this female bison. Do you have acne? Don't you think these small acne are very similar to the acne on patients with mild smallpox infection?" When Auguste heard this, he bent over and leaned forward, but his elders used this attitude to look at a female bison that had just finished giving birth. The posture was indeed a bit unsightly. The cow also seemed to feel that she was being stolen by some bad-hearted biped. She peeped, whispered a moo, flicked her big tail, turned around and left Auguste Westland. That flick the tip of the tail just touched Auguste's face, and he directly slapped the guy with a somersault. Babel covered her mouth and laughed. After such a long period of recuperation, Bibera, who was originally skinny, has now returned to the style that a young woman in her 30s should have. She is round and jade, and now she has the taste of a lady. Auguste got up from the ground with a trace of embarrassment on his face, but he ignored the cow dung stained on his pants, and immediately said with some excitement, "Boss, I see those small pimples. Indeed, it's very similar to the smallpox on the body of a smallpox patient. Then, what do you think of from these little pimples? Shi Xiong followed his advice. These words stopped August. He thought for a long time before hesitatingly asked, "Boss, do you mean the method of human pox vaccination?" As an alchemist who is proficient in drug research, Augusta naturally knows the human pox vaccination method that is now popular in the European continent. Although this method of vaccination against smallpox has various flaws, and even has a fatality rate that is not low, the flaws of the human pox vaccination method are nothing compared to the almost inexplicable and terrifying fatality rate of smallpox. In any case, this vaccination method, which is now popular in Europe, is currently the most effective way to fight against smallpox. Shi Xiong nodded. Since you know the human pox vaccination method, you should understand the principle of this vaccination method, right? It seems to be a principle from the ancient and magical East. I remember what it means to fight poison with poison. Well, that's what it means. After all, this kind of human pox vaccination method came from that ancient and mysterious country. I think the basic purpose of the alchemists or doctors over there using this vaccination method is to use smallpox itself to deal with smallpox. It is just that the smallpox virus is weakened by the smallpox patient itself, and then when normal people are vaccinated, the toxicity will be much smaller, within the acceptable range of normal people. Augusta can become an alchemist. His own IQ is certainly not low, and the human pox vaccination method has been spread in the European continent for more than 30 years. He must have pondered related cases. Shi Xiong smiled and raised a thumb to Augusta. Augusta was extremely shy. You're right. The principle of vaccinia is such a principle. It's just that even those smallpox patients who are less ill, the weakened smallpox virus extracted from the body is more effective than normal humans are also very toxic. Some people cannot bear this level of variola virus and will die after vaccination. Shi Xiong paused, looked at the two men standing in front of him, and continued, "But if we find a virus that contains variola virus, and at the same time, the potency of this variola virus is within the range of normal people's tolerance, if so, what do you think of the future?" Hearing Shi Xiong's words, August's eyes lit up immediately. He bowed his head thoughtfully for a long time, and turned his head several times to look at the female bison that was continuing to graze leisurely not far away. Then he asked, "Boss, you mean this one?" The acne in the female bison contains the smallpox virus that has been greatly weakened and can be tolerated? Yes, you are right, Shi Xiong said appreciatively. Actually, variola virus can not only infect humans, but also animals such as cattle. However, the immunity of cattle infected with variola virus is far greater than that of humans. Well, you have seen humans who died of smallpox, but have you ever seen a cow that died of smallpox? This is the strength of the cow's immune system. Therefore, the smallpox virus that has been weakened by the cow's immune system is far less potent than the smallpox virus contained in human pox. So, we can extract the smallpox virus from the acne on these cows, and then inoculate them? Auguste excitedly interrupted Stone Bear's words and said loudly. Shi Xiong nodded with satisfaction. www.wuxiaspit.com. You are right. Vaccinia from cows. Is this type of acne? I call it vaccinia. The serum extracted from vaccinia is actually the best vaccine against variola virus, and I can guarantee that this kind of serum extracted from vaccinia is used as a vaccine, and there will be almost no deaths after vaccinations. You can scratch the vaccinia, get a little bit of serum from it, and then make a small cut on the arm of the person who needs to be inoculated, and then put the serum on the wound to complete the simplest inoculation. Shi Xiong began to tell Augusta about how to inoculate. Of course, Shi Xiong also has an apology in his heart to the original inventor of the vaccinia vaccination method, the Englishman Edward Jenner. Sorry, Mr. Jenner, you were the inventor of the vaccinia vaccination method in the historical time and space. You have also become famous because of this, but now there is no way. For the sake of my people, I have to take your ticket and use it first. Well, It seems that Mr. Jenner is only 17 years old at this time. What is he doing now? It seems to be an apprentice with an internist. It's just that the future scientific research results of a Xiazangtai are used. It seems that it's a little bit too authentic. Chapter 362, Southeast Line. Mad Bull is the worthy first strong man in the Crooked Deer's tribe, and the second warrior Kukui ranked second only today. The most powerful warrior Kukui. Crazy Bull's figure is tall. Even in later generations, his figure can be said to be rare and strong. In this era, in addition to the real bug-level existence of Shi Xiong, he can actually be regarded as bug-level. However, regardless of the Mad Bull's tall and strong figure, he has a delicate mind that does not match his body, otherwise he would not become the second warrior of the Crooked Deer tribe. Just like the fierce dog, he is not inferior to the Mad Cow in body strength or anything, but in the eyes of the Crooked Deer tribe and many warriors, he is a rough man, completely incomparable with the Mad Cow. It is precisely because Mad Bull has such characteristics that Shi Xiong let him serve as a captain of the expeditionary army, and Mad Bull did not live up to the trust that Stone Bear had placed in him, and performed very well during the expedition to the Cree tribe. You know that his boss, Kukui, the first warrior of the Crooked Deer tribe, is just the head of the logistics soldiers. Although the supervisor is one level older than the brigade, how can the logistics unit be compared with the combat unit fighting on the front line? Crazy Bull doesn't understand the principle that the soldiers and horses do not move the food and grass first. He simply feels that the guardian boss is very good to him, and he must repay the trust of the boss. When the boss returned to the royal court of the tribe, he personally confessed to himself that he led the soldiers of the 2 brigade to guard the southeast front line. So he must guard this line well. Mad Bull knows that although the Cree tribe has been defeated, there is still a Semino tribe to the southeast of the Cree tribe, which is not weak, and this tribe, like the Yuchi tribe, once left the Cree tribe alone. Tribal. And the boss also said that the Seminoes and the Spaniards are very hot, so I must not only guard against the Seminoes, but also guard against the nasty Vasiku, especially to guard against the embarrassment of the Seminoes and the Spaniards and unite to attack their defense line. Before the expeditionary force, the organization was 1 squadron of 50 people, and 1 squadron of 5 squadrons, that is, 250 people. Now the boss has handed over the combat power of 2 battalions, or 500 people, to himself, in order to guard the Cree's southeast defense line, so he must complete the characters handed over by the boss anyway. But with such a small number of people, it is almost impossible to defend such a large line of defense. However, Mad Cow is not a person who can't use his brain. He found out many people familiar with the local situation from the Cree tribe. After asking these people carefully, Mad Cow decided to put his main position in the distance, a flat area about 100 miles northwest of Wasiku's station. According to the local people of the Cree, although the border between the Cree and the Semino is very long, it is possible to go to the Cree from the residences of the Vasikus and the territory of the Seminoes. There are not many roads. In the words of later generations, this area belongs to the junction of Florida and Georgia. The rivers here are crisscrossing and most places are difficult to pass. This is true in later generations. In this era without roads and bridges, this area is even more dense with primitive jungles. Rivers and swamps can be seen everywhere. If you want to get from there to here, there are only a few roads to go. So Mad Cow made a decisive judgment. He directly pressed the team's position until it was only 100 miles away from the Spaniards' residence. In this position, you can easily monitor the roads leading to the Cree territory, regardless of which road the Spaniards and Seminoes want to take. The expeditionary scouts that are scattered every day can easily monitor them. It's just that it's easy to offend the Spaniards and Seminoes by doing so. After all, you have lined up your position under the eyes of others. What do you mean? But what about this? Do you Spaniards and Seminoes dare to fight over? Joke. Lao Tzu's grenades and muskets are not fun yet. If you dare to come over, Lao Tzu will not mind giving you an unforgettable lesson. Crazy Bull, who has seen the power of bullet-throwing barrels with his own eyes, is now very confident in the strength of his own hands. After all, he has 3 squadrons in his team with a total of 60 balloons. In addition, There are 200 musketeers, plus the rangers and scouts. Even if the Seminoles come to 5,000 people, the mad cow is sure to repel or even kill them. As for the Spaniards, are they scary? In terms of the boss, those Spaniards have whiter skin and yellower hair. What they say is different from our Indians. What else is there? They also carried a head on their shoulders, and there were only 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 nose and 1 mouth on their heads. The musket hits them like an eye, and the grenades from the grenadier fall among them, and they can also blow up their flesh and blood. Don't be afraid of them. If the Spaniards dare to come, they will bombard them with bullets. Mad Bull clearly remembers what the boss said, and Mad Bull has never doubted what the boss said. Now that the boss said so, if the Spaniards really dare to come, I dare to bombard him with a tossing barrel. Mad Bull knows very well that the boss gives this line of defense to himself is the greatest trust in himself, but the problem is that he always stays here like this, which is really a bit boring. Guys like fierce dogs, one by one, with 1 or 2 squadrons, dared to run rampant everywhere, and when they met those who didn't have long eyes, it was a beating. That kind of feeling must be wonderful. And I can only take a large group of people to stay here. This kind of feeling is really uncomfortable. Naiu, tail, do you have any cigarettes there? Get me some cigarettes. Crazy Bull put down the wooden bowl in his hand and shouted anxiously to the other side. Although it's autumn, the weather here is still boring. www.wuxiaspa.com. Even if you sit in the shade of a big tree, the sweat still flows out like you don't need money. Already filled with cold water, Mad Cow just wants to come and enjoy cigarettes again. Naiu is a younger member of the Crazy Bull family. He was only 16 years old this year and was brought out by the Crazy Bull. Now, this young man who is not tall serves Mad Bull as a life assistant, and he is just by his side anyway. Uncle, these are the only few cigarettes I have left. Before Naiu finished speaking, the cigarette case in his hand was smashed by Mad Naiu. Crazy Cow took 2 cigarettes from it. He wanted to learn how the boss did and put one of the cigarettes on his ears, but he suddenly thought that he was sweating now, and the cigarettes on his ears could only be ruined by sweat in the end. So Mad Cow stuffed a cigarette back in, put the cigarette in his hand on his mouth, and then took out the hose and shook it in the wind, and a flame came out. Taking a deep breath of cigarette, Mad Cow's face showed a comfortable expression. I was about to say something to Naiu, when suddenly I heard 2 long and 3 short horns sounding in the distance. Chapter 363, The Almost Invincible Spanish Navy. Uncle, this is the horn of Uncle Lynx. 2 long and 3 short, the gods are on the top. This is where the enemy has been discovered. The cowtail held only a few pieces. The cigarette pack opened his mouth wide in surprise, and even forgot to put the cigarette pack in the leather pouch around his waist. Why, panic, Mad Cow glared at his nephew. What's wrong with the enemy? Do you think the enemy can beat us? Did you forget how the Carry people were in us before? It collapsed under the bombardment of the grenadier. Cowtail's dark face blushed, and he whispered, Uncle, I'm not afraid or worried. I just want to remind you that this is the horn of Uncle Lynx, which means that there is really a big enemy coming. Well, your kid can't fight wars, but this mess is quite clear. Mad Bull no longer has his own nephew. It's not good to fight on the battlefield. These things also need to be proficient. I see you in the future. Follow the guy who is fast horse, and that guy is very proficient in this set. If you help him in the past, you should be able to give full play to your strengths. Uncle, you don't want me anymore. The young man's face changed drastically, and he could be seen that he was frightened by the words of Mad Cow. Crazy Naiu glared at Naiu's tail again, and finally shook his head and sighed reluctantly, and took a puff of cigarette. Only then did he carefully choke off the half of the cigarette he had smoked, and put the remaining half of the cigarette carefully. He went into the leather bag around his waist, then stood up, and said in a violent voice, Go back to the battlefield, and see who the short-eyed guys dare to provoke us. A smile appeared on Naiu's face, and he followed his uncle quickly toward the battlefield. Whether it is Major General Slicer Carlos or Chief O'Mara, The Cherokee army that is stuck in the fortress leading to the territory of the Cree feels very helpless. The ghost knows how the commander of this army chose the position. It happened to be stuck in that position, not far or close to the fortress, but it happened to be able to monitor the most important ones from the fortress to the Cree's site. The way. Originally, according to the plan discussed by Major General Carlos and Chief O'Mara, the Semino-Spanish coalition should quietly enter the territory of the Cree, and then the Semino, who is familiar with the local situation, acted as scouts, and the large troops in the rear move forward in groups, so as to avoid being broken apart by the enemy to the greatest extent. Originally, Major General Carlos did not agree with this marching plan. After all, this time he dispatched all the Marines that could be touched, with a total of 1,500 elite Spanish soldiers. These 1,500 soldiers were all musketeers. If 2 centuries ago, so many people would be enough to form a large phalanx. Although it was once brilliant, the large square that smashed the French and the Prussians has disappeared, but if these 1,500 musketeers were to shoot platoons, they would be extremely powerful. At the very least, if you deal with these native Indians, even if there are 10,000 people on the opposite side, you will definitely not be pleased in front of these 1,500 musketeers. This point, the experienced Major General Carlos is very clear. If the area entered this time is not on the coast, and the river leading to that area is relatively small, Major General Carlos really wants to drive over the invincible fleet under his command. In addition, if it is the flagship of the North American squadron under his command, the second-tier battleship San Pedro, Lightning built in 1749, if it can be pulled up, it will be carried by this flagship alone. The 80 artillery pieces are enough to wipe out any enemy who dares to stand in the way. It's a pity, this time it's land warfare, not naval battle. Major General Carlos, who was riding on a tall horse, looked at the looming enemy position ahead, and shook his head regretfully. This is not what Major General Carlos is conjecturing. In this era, the Spanish Navy represents invincibility. Regardless of whether the United Kingdom and France are playing happily, I have always been watching in Spain. If I participate in the war in Spain, even if the French and the British join forces, they will not be the opponent of the invincible Navy of Spain. In this era before the outbreak of the Battle of Trafalgar, the powerful Spain, especially the powerful and almost invincible Spanish Navy, was so emboldened. As of this year, that is, 1766, the entire Spanish Navy has a total of 161 sailing battleships with more than 50 guns. This number is almost the sum of the sailing battleships owned by the French Navy and the British Navy. Among the 161 sailing battleships, there are 2 extremely powerful first-class battleships. One of them was the Royal Philip, which was built in 1732 and had 114 guns and a displacement of 2,200 tons. Another powerful first-tier battleship was the San Carlos with 112 guns and a displacement of 1,714 tons, just launched last year. Only these 2 first-tier battleships with powerful firepower are enough to sweep the entire Atlantic Ocean. Any battleship of another country that sails on the Atlantic Ocean will have to obediently give way after seeing these 2 first-tier battleships. No country dared to challenge these 2 powerful battleships in the Atlantic Ocean. Although the mighty Spain built as many as 14 first-class battleships before the Battle of Trafalgar, 11 of which were battleships with 112 guns, but before 1770, Spain had only first-class battleships. These 2 ships, and the other 12 ships, were built after 1770. Before the Battle of Trafalgar, the Spanish Navy's first-class sailing battleships were extremely powerful, both in terms of hull size and tonnage, and larger than British warships of the same level, and their firepower was more fierce. The Spanish Navy's first-class battleships have an average of 10 more guns than the British first-class battleships. This is an incredible number. These sea monsters are not only at the top of the naval powers on paper data, but also extremely powerful in actual combat. The battleships of other countries simply cannot compete head-on with these sea monsters of the Spanish Navy. It's a pity. www.wuxiaspa.com. The powerful Spanish Navy has a fatal flaw that can't be solved after more than 200 years, that is, the lack of sufficiently good naval commanders. If the Spanish Navy can have better naval commanders, no one dares to say what the outcome of the Battle of Trafalgar will be. If the Spanish generals who commanded this naval battle were good enough, there might be no empire that never sets in the sun. The topic turned around. At present, in addition to these two powerful first-class battleships, the Spanish Navy also has 3 second-class battleships with 94 guns and 6 second-class battleships with 80 guns. One of them includes Major General Carlos. The flagship of the ship now on board is the San Pedro, Lightning with 80 guns. It's just that Major General Carlos shouldn't know that his current flagship, the San Pedro/Lightning, is now just a double-deck battleship equipped with 80 artillery pieces, but in 1803, this second-class battleship has been modified to add a deck, and the total number of guns has reached 100, and it has been upgraded to a first-class battleship. Moreover, this modified San Pedro/Lightning also participated in the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805. Unfortunately, this powerful battleship suffered severe damage in the battle and was finally in the battle, stranded in the storm after the end. Chapter 364, Coalition Forces. The Spanish Navy is indeed invincible in the entire Atlantic Ocean. Even Britain and France dare not provoke the Spanish Navy. But when it comes to the army, Spain can't do it. In the first half of the 17th century, when it comes to the most powerful army on the European continent, there will inevitably be a share of the Spanish army. After all, the Spanish phalanx that deterred the entire Europe at that time was not a joke. Only in the second half of the 17th century, the French army rose rapidly and gradually became the most powerful army on the European continent. Especially in the 100 years from the second half of the 17th century to the present, France has fought several battles with several other countries. The powerful French army is almost in the posture of one country singled out half of the continent, rampant across Europe. Now, the most powerful army in Europe is in France. This point, even Major General Carlos has to admit. However, Major General Carlos did not think that the 1,500 Marines under his command could not beat the 500-odd native Indians in front of him. It really doesn't work. There are more than 4,000 Seminoles on the periphery of the musketeers. Although these 4,000 Seminoles are not all the power of the entire Semino tribe, the fighters who can be chosen by Chief Omaro to follow him are definitely the most elite fighters of the entire Semino tribe. This point, Major General Carlos must also admit. How could such an army of nearly 6,000 elite fighters fail to defeat the 500 native Indians on the opposite side? Although the news from the front said that these native Indians only used more than 2,000 people, they defeated the elite fighters of the Cree tribe, which amounted to tens of thousands, and these native Indians also possessed a very powerful weapon, but none Major General Carlos, who had experienced the baptism of bullet-throwing grenade, didn't believe the news at all. In the eyes of Major General Carlos, what other battles can be as fierce as the first and second battleships in the ocean? Several battleships carrying dozens of artillery bombarded each other at a distance of 100 to 200 meters. The tragedy was absolutely unimaginable by the army. It's like the San Pedro, Lightning that I'm riding in. When chasing the pirates in the Caribbean a year before, I used the 26 32-pound pirates at a distance of less than 150 meters. The guns, 26 18-pound guns and 28 12-pound guns, blasted the pirate flagship to pieces. The power of dozens of artillery volleys is no less than Master Thor's wielding Thor's hammer and shed endless anger. No one can escape under such anger. It is a pity that the San Pedro, Blixum, has no way to follow herself to land. Major General Carlos put down the monoculars in his hand and sighed slightly. As an outstanding rear admiral, he felt very uncomfortable when he arrived on land without the company of the flagship. Major General Carlos also heard the horn sounded by the bobcats. He smiled slightly, and said to the adjutant next to him, "Felisa, the natives on the opposite side have found us. Can you say that we can smash their positions in one fell swoop?" "Felisa, smiled and said, "The general, with the natives like the clowns, how can we stop the elite soldiers of our Marines? I think our soldiers may only need one charge to destroy the indigenous positions completely." Feliza is a major officer, and his background is quite noble. His father is a count in Spain. It is precisely for this reason that Feliza was able to become an adjutant to the Spanish Royal Navy Rear Admiral, without risking his life on the front lines like other peers. Major General Carlos nodded with a smile on his face. "General, Chief Omar is here," Feliza reminded in a low voice. Major General Carlos turned his head and saw Chief Omar running over on horseback under the protection of several entourages. "Your Excellency, we will start a charge in a while. Our people will protect your musketeers on the two wings. If necessary, our people can also circumvent and cut off the retreat of those damned Cherokees." Carlos looked at Omala and smiled slightly. "Chief Omala, don't you think that we have so many people to deal with 500 people, so we need such complicated tactics? So many of us, we only need one charge, can completely disintegrate and destroy those indigenous positions." Chief Omar obviously thinks so too. He also smiled and nodded. The front horn sounded again, but this horn sound was not the horn of the Cherokee, but the horn of the offensive from Semino's forward troops. And along with the sound of the horns of the Semino strikers, there was a loud charging horn. Needless to say, this must be the horn of the Royal Spanish Marines charging. In this era, the armies of European countries have begun to use bugles to command some battles. The whistle used in the past is still a little quieter, but now the rhythmic whistle has been gradually replaced by a louder bugle. During single-handed warfare in the Civil War, when the two warring parties fired each other with muskets, there was a military band playing by the side. The sound of the charging horn and the bugle were intertwined, and the thousands of soldiers of the Semino-Spanish coalition in the distance suddenly made a huge howl. And then the billowing waves of people rushed towards the small position ahead, rushed over. At this time, there were still very few military horses, even for the armies of European countries. Most of the horses were only qualified to be ridden by officers. I'm reading www.ukenshu.com. Therefore, the 5,000 or 6,000 soldiers of the Semino-Spanish coalition are all advancing on foot. Compared with the neat and rhythmic pace of the 1,500 musketeers of the Spanish Marines, although the Seminos are noisy, their aura is not bad at all. But just as the Semino-Spanish coalition was approaching the position of about 200 meters away, a series of low bangs suddenly remembered. A few seconds later, the charging coalition immediately seemed to have been hit by a head-on. Dozens of brilliant fireworks erupted silently from the front row of the coalition forces, accompanied by huge explosions. The next moment, the front row of the coalition forces suddenly added hundreds of fragmented corpses that were bombed. Bright blood sprayed everywhere, and stumps and broken arms could be seen everywhere. This sudden explosion caused the coalition forces that had soared to the sky suddenly withered, and the cry that was still shaking the sky almost disappeared in an instant, and the entire battlefield was silent. In the distance, Major General Carlos and Chief Omar were also stunned by the sudden explosion. Especially Major General Carlos. His mouth grew in surprise, enough to fit a fire egg. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 365, The King of War in this age. Chief Amaro was almost crazy. He smashed anything that appeared in his sight with the wooden stick in his hand. When he had smashed everything that could be smashed, he started smashing the ground again, smashing the solid ground. There are small pits. Finally, just when he tried to smash the wooden stick with the thickness of an adult's forearm on his head, one of his closest friends and the leader of a Semino tribe rushed up to take it, the stick in his hand. No wonder Chief Omaro went mad. Whoever saw his elite were slaughtered like a group of helpless turkeys, but there was no way to save those subordinates. It is estimated that everyone would go mad. That's right, The Semino-Spanish coalition forces were so powerful when they attacked the position where the Mad Bull was stationed, they had never seen the power of a bullet-throwing barrel. They were a pair of air every day, and then they wished they could no longer use it. It looks like a hole in the earth's sunrise. Even Chief O'Mara, who was standing behind, was very excited. He even imagined that he would take down the Cherokees in front of him, and then command the Semino army to sweep the entire territory of the Cree tribe and take his mother. The tribe was saved and eventually became a powerful chief in charge of the two tribes of Cree and Semino, thus climbing to the pinnacle of life in this era. The chiefs of any tribe almost have such a dream: continuously expand their territory, continuously increase the population under their jurisdiction, and become the most powerful tribe. Seeing that this wish is about to come true, but what are those weapons that can make a loud noise and are so powerful? Are these powerful weapons the key to the Cherokee's sweep of the Cree? Crazy Bull is thick on the outside and thin on the inside, and he has a lot of sorrowful eyes. The most important thing is that this guy is very good at learning, so when he saw the Semino-Spanish coalition lined up in a dense formation and began to attack the position, he decided to learn what the boss once did. That was the first confrontation between the expeditionary force and a large force of the Cree when the expeditionary army had just crossed the Great Smoky Mountains and reached the exit of the Kabeder River Valley. In that battle, the boss was under tremendous pressure. He kept placing 20,000 carry people at a distance of only 200 meters from the position before he ordered the firing. As a result, under the tactics of pinching his waist and heading his head, the bullets only came. 2 rounds of volleys broke 20,000 elite fighters from the Cree tribe. It was nonsense to say that I was not afraid of charging 20,000 Cree at that time. Anyway, even if it was a Mad Bull, both legs were swinging. You have not personally experienced the scene of a concentrated charge of 20,000 people. It is really difficult for you to imagine how much pressure is. But the boss said that there is a reward if you have to give up, and how much you pay. You will gain much. Although facing the collective charge of 20,000 people, he almost scared himself and the many recruits of the expeditionary army, but it is undeniable that the tactics adopted by the battle boss were really wonderful. Pinching the waist and starting the head, this kind of fighter looks dangerous, but the reward is really great. Therefore, when the 500 expeditionary brothers under the command of Mad Bull were facing a collective charge of nearly 6,000 Semino-Spanish elite forces, Mad Bull also decided to play a heartbeat, that is, a close fight. Mad Bull believes that the brothers can withstand this pressure. At the time of the Battle of the Kabeder River Valley, more than 2,000 brothers were not frightened when they faced a collective charge of 20,000 Cree. The brothers, who had gone through several battles, large and small, have grown from recruits to veterans. They are even less likely to be intimidated by the Semino-Spanish coalition forces in front of them. Even if there are 1,500 Spanish musketeers on the opposite side, Mad Bull believes that the brothers can hold back their breath. Those Spanish musketeers don't look at holding muskets, but the boss said, the muskets held by those Spanish musketeers are not much better than fire sticks. The effective range of those muskets is not even as far as the range of the strong bows in the hands of the guerrilla brothers. They must walk within 100 meters to be able to use the power of the muskets. As for the weapons in the hands of the Seminos, it's not even worth mentioning. The Seminos are not even as powerful as the Cree warriors. If this is the case, let you taste the power of the bullet toss. So Mad Bull decisively ordered the firing when the Semino-Spanish coalition rushed to a distance of 200 meters from the position. However, Mad Bull was a bit greedy. He did not use the tactics of pinching his waist and heading his head, because Mad Bull wanted to keep all the Seminos who had colluded with Vasicud. As a result, after the Mad Cow issued the order to attack with full force and extend the bombing, both the Seminos and the Spaniards were completely wiped out. More than 4,000 Seminos and 1,500 Spanish musketeers are like a fleet that has encountered a superstorm in the Atlantic Ocean. No matter how hard they struggle, they are all in vain in the face of this powerful storm. The killing power of one grenadier may not be that great, but how about a total of 60 grenades of 3 grenadier squadrons? That power is not so big. Especially the inexperienced Semino. The Spanish coalition is still lined up to charge in such a dense formation, In front of this row of grenadiers, it is simply a mouse licking a cat to death. When 60-door grenadiers started firing at an average rate of about 20 rounds per minute, and the impact point of each round continued to extend far away, the Semino-Spanish coalition collapsed completely. In fact, from the second round of the salvo, the Semino-Spanish coalition has collapsed. How can they, who have never seen the power of a bombshell, withstand the volley of such weapons? And when the tossing barrels stretched out to shoot www.wuxiasput.com, the coalition forces couldn't escape even if they wanted to run. Just kidding. The average rate of fire is once every 3 seconds, and the speed of the grenade flying in the air reaches the speed of sound, let alone these coalition soldiers who run on 2 legs. Even in later generations, the infantry encounters this kind of miniature artillery. When extending shooting, you have to kneel down and sing to conquer. Are you really calling the king of war for nothing? Although this grenadier is not comparable to the various artillery of later generations, in this era, these grenadiers are the king of war. Therefore, the Semino-Spanish coalition forces were immediately slaughtered. Oh no, it should be said that they were the target of torture. And how can Chief Amera, who watched his subordinates be tortured and killed, tolerate it? At the first moment, the pinnacle of life is right in front of you, and at the next moment, you fall directly into hell. With this huge gap, Chief Amera didn't go crazy right away. He was already considered very tough. Chapter 366, Exposed. Chief Amera is going crazy over there, while Major General Carlos with half-gray hair is silent. It's not that Major General Carlos doesn't care about his men. He also feels distressed. All the Marine Corps soldiers of the entire North American squadron were slaughtered just under his nose. Can he not feel distressed? From his red eyes, you can see how distressed and angry Major General Carlos is at this time. But what can be done to feel distressed and angry? There is no way. In the face of this new and powerful weapon, fragile life is no different from a piece of paper. Major General Carlos wanted to summon God and his old man to rescue his men, but is that possible? Major General Carlos has seen life and death. Not just, he is used to seeing life and death. During naval battles, you can often see hundreds of soldiers on a ship sink into the depths of the sea with the ship. An originally mighty battleship was torn into pieces by artillery in just 10 minutes. Fragmented. Whether it is the battleship or the brothers on the battleship, they are the flesh of Major General Carlos. But so what? This is war, and war must be deadly. It is precisely because Major General Carlos is accustomed to seeing this kind of establishment being wiped out. Whether it is his subordinates or his enemies, he has seen more. Therefore, even though his 1,500 musketeers are being slaughtered by the enemy's powerful weapons, Major General Carlos is not as irritated as Chief Amera. Major General Carlos wanted to rescue those brothers, but he also knew very well that whether those brothers could survive or not was really up to his fate. Those who can survive are good fate, and God is blessing them. Those who can't survive, I'm really sorry, even God has abandoned you. However, although Major General Carlos felt very distressed, his biggest concern was not on the soldiers of the Marine Corps. What he is most concerned about now is the powerful weapon used by the Cherokee. What kind of weapon is this? Is it the kind of grenade thrown by the grenadier? It looks very similar to the explosion, but the grenadier can't throw the grenade so far. The first round of bombing has a long distance, 200 meters. How could a grenadier throw a grenade so far? Major General Carlos stared at the battlefield that was still screaming in the distance with red eyes, but his heart was ups and downs. The grenadier is a service generally owned by the armies of European countries in this era. It refers to the infantry in the army that can throw grenade. The grenade of this era is not like the grenade of later generations or the earthen grenade made by the stone bear. The grenade thrown by the grenadier of this era is really a weapon similar to the grenades fired by artillery. The size and weight of this grenade are about the same as small artillery shells. A grenade weighs more than 4 or 5 kgs. Therefore, it is necessary to select soldiers with superior arm strength among the infantry to throw them. As early as when Leo III of the Byzantine Empire was in power, in the 8th century AD, The soldiers of the Byzantine Empire threw a record of attacking the enemy with a clay pot filled with Greek fire, the prototype of the bomber. After nearly 1,000 years of development, this branch did not become a conventional branch of the armed forces of various countries until the last century, that is, the 17th century. However, these soldiers as grenadiers need to throw grenades at the enemy in front of their own front in the battle. Therefore, the title of grenadier in the European army is used as an honorary title for the heroic combat performance of soldiers, and it also shows that the grenadiers are the elite and outstanding among the infantry. In other words, the grenadiers are among the elites in the military of various countries. But the problem is that even if it is a grenadier with great strength, it is impossible to throw a grenade weighing 4 or 5 caddies to a distance of 200 meters away. Therefore, those Cherokee must have a way to throw grenade to 200 meters or more. Seeing that the burst point of the latest round had reached a distance of more than 400 meters from the Cherokee positions, Major General Carlos was even more puzzled. Is it a catapult? As an old soldier who has been in the army in the front line for decades, Major General Carlos immediately thought of the catapult, an ancient and efficient long-range attack weapon. The problem is that the sling can't throw a grenade to such a distance. Major General Carlos immediately denied this guess. Although a large sling can throw a heavy object weighing tens or even hundreds of kilograms to a distance of 200 to 300 meters, it can be used to throw a grenade easily to a distance of 400 to 500 meters, but that kind of large sling are usually very big, up to 10 meters high. Once such a big guy appears, you can see it from far away. And small slings are absolutely unable to throw a grenade to such a distance. Not to mention that the Cherokee weapons are still dozens of volleys. Is it a giant crossbow like a bent crossbow? As soon as this thought came out, it was strangled to death by Major General Carlos. Large crossbows are not small in size and require a lot of people to control them. The most important thing is that the cost of this large crossbow is very high. The cost of a large crossbow is almost as high as that of a 24-pound gun. Large crossbows can't be made by ordinary people. It needs extremely skilled craftsmen to make them. It is impossible for the native Indians to make such a large crossbow. Then, what methods did the natives use to throw these explosive grenades to such a distance? Major General Carlos was distressed. Bang, bang, bang was accompanied by a series of dull sounds. After a few seconds, the huge explosion sounded again. This immediately caused Major General Carlos to play a joke. Could it be that these Cherokee natives have come up with any more advanced throwing weapons? The series of bangs www.wuxiaspa.com is obviously the sound that can only be made after the propellant is detonated. Could it be that the Cherokee natives developed an artillery that can fire grenades? This sudden thought immediately made Major General Carlos excited. As an old soldier, he has seen too many things, especially about war, uncertainty in what method the Cherokee natives on the opposite side used to throw the grenades that could explode to such a distance. Major General Carlos only felt that the idea he had just come up with was the closest to the facts. A new type of artillery that can launch blooming grenades, and has an effective range of 500 to 600 meters. Major General Carlos only felt that his heart shrank suddenly. If you can get this new type of artillery and install it on a battleship, then your own battleship can bomb the enemy's battleship at a distance of 500 or 600 meters, without having to get closer to the enemy's battleship by 200 meters. The most important thing is that this is an artillery that can fire bombs. Now the naval ships of all countries are made of wood. The most feared is the bombs that can explode. And once the navy ships of the Spanish Empire, all the ships are equipped with this kind of artillery, and the warships of other countries are only left to be beaten. Chapter 367, Those weapons must be obtained. In the eyes of Major General Carlos, although he was distressed by the howling ghosts and howls and even the collapsed coalition soldiers in front of him, the new weapons used by the enemy were undoubtedly more important. As a general who is accustomed to life and death, Carlos is well versed in the truth that the victory of war is piled up by countless flesh and blood and corpses. In his eyes, soldiers are used for sacrifice, and war without sacrifice is not called war. But in the same way, sacrifice must be worthwhile. It's like the sacrifice of being tortured and crushed in front of you. If you don't find this new weapon used by the Cherokee to kill, then this is an unquestionable sacrifice. Well, even sacrifice is not counted on. This is called sudden death. But now that a powerful new weapon has been discovered that other European countries have not yet noticed, then this is a valuable sacrifice. Although it seems a bit extravagant to exchange the lives of 1,500 Marines for the exposure of this new weapon, in the eyes of Major General Carlos, this exchange is absolutely valuable. If Spain can really obtain this weapon, or even the method of making this weapon, then there is no doubt that Spain's military power will step up to a big step, thus bringing the British who have been chasing behind French and Prussians all flung away. Even the declining Royal Spanish Army can re-emerge with this weapon. Although Carlos is a rear admiral, as a senior officer in the Spanish Royal Army, he is well aware of the shortcomings of walking on one leg. In the 16th century, not only the Royal Spanish Navy was invincible in the Atlantic Ocean, but even the Royal Spanish Army was invincible on the European continent and the New World. In particular, the prestige of Spain's large phalanx made the entire European continent tremble. However, as muskets, especially muskets, began to be widely equipped to the armies of various countries, the once famous Spanish phalanx did not work anymore. This kind of tactical phalanx with spearmen as the mainstay and musketeers as a supplement has completely lost its meaning in the face of the current muskets. Nowadays, the popular platooning tactics of various countries have restrained Spain's generous formations. But also, if you can get this new type of weapon that can fire bullets, then this weapon is the natural enemy of platoon gun tactics. This kind of weapon that can fire bullets naturally restrains the platoon gun tactics that require a dense formation. If the platoon tactics do not have a close formation, their power will plummet. And once soldiers line up to fire platoon guns, it only takes dozens of such shots to blow up soldiers in a regiment or even a brigade in just a few minutes. Just like the 1,500 Marines of the North American Squadron of the Royal Spanish Navy, there is nowhere to run. Therefore, this weapon is definitely a weapon that represents the future. Whoever can master this weapon can stand at the forefront of the times. In this regard, Major General Carlos dared to use his decades of military career as a guarantee. Even if he was facing God, he dared to say so. Obviously his soldiers in the front were completely destroyed by the bombing, even in mass deaths, but Major General Carlos was not as crazy as the Chief O'Mara, who was going crazy. His eyes were getting brighter and brighter. That posture. I can't wait to see directly what the new weapons used by the Cherokee natives on the opposite side are. The defeated Semino-Spanish coalition soldiers ran back desperately. Those soldiers who survived by chance watched the brothers in front, behind, and on the left and right suddenly turned into a pile of minced meat. That kind of vision shocks can cause people to collapse directly. So they were controlled by instinct almost instantly, the instinct to escape. At this time their brains are no longer useful, and any thoughts and avoiding thoughts have disappeared in their brains. The only thing they can do now is the brainstem that controls the instinctive response. Just like a crocodile with only a brainstem, in this case, the escape instinct deeply embedded in the genes will take over all the actions of the body. Entrapped by the fleeing soldiers, both Major General Carlos and Chief Omar could not help but flee to the rear with the fleeing army, even if they were protected by personal guards. But in the face of this rolling crowd, these guards' power is so fragile. The human instinct to escape for life is very terrifying. These defeated deserters ran a few miles or even more than a dozen miles in a short period of time, until the body could no longer hold on, and this changed one by one, become a ground gourd. Even Major General Carlos and Chief O'Mara, who have been guarded by his own soldiers, are also muddy and embarrassed. But there is no way, the reality is so cruel, it is not easy for them to save their lives in the defeated deserters. When the brain's intellect gradually took over the escape instinct of brainstem control, all the Semino-Spanish coalition forces discovered that in just one charge, more than 3,000 people died on the battlefield. The battle damage rate exceeded 50! This is a very scary number, especially Chief O'Mara. His soldiers died more than 2,000, and the number of deaths exceeded half, because although Semino fighters are in charge of the two wings, They charge too far forward when they charge. On the contrary, the Marines under Major General Carlos slowed down slightly because of the charge. As a result, more than 1,500 people died, and the death toll was less than half. But anyway, this charge of nearly 6,000 people eventually ran back to more than 2,000 people, and more than half of the people died on the way to the charge and escape. This was undoubtedly a complete defeat. At this time, the furious Chief Omar understood why the Semino tribe's mother clan, the Cree tribe, with tens of thousands of fighters, would be beaten by more than 2,000 people. It's not as good as death. www.wuxiaspit. It turns out that the root cause is here. That kind of horrible weapon is too horrible. No one can withstand such a horrible weapon. Perhaps, those Cherokee people are really the means that the gods can have. General, what should we do in the future? If those Cherokee fight over, we won't be able to resist it at all. After Chief Omar calmed down a bit, he couldn't wait to find Major General Carlos. Don't worry, Major General Carlos is in a much better state. However, it is obviously impossible to rescue or liberate your mother clan. Those Cherokees possessing such weapons are simply not something we can deal with. Yes. However, if we stay close to the fortress, then with our navy warships, those Cherokee people would not dare to come over. After a pause, Major General Carlos waved away the people around him, and then whispered, "Chief, we have to obtain Cherokee weapons. We need to discuss a way." Chapter 368, Smelly and Hard. Semino. The Spanish coalition's rout made the expeditionary force boil. Although they are all veterans who have gone through more than a dozen battles, they can rout the enemy in such a devastating way. This victory is very worth celebrating. Crazy Naiu smiled and could see his little tongue, which shows how happy he is. Although he has fought dozens of victories before, he did not personally direct them. As for the battle that just ended, the commander, of course, was pleased with the big victory achieved under his command. Of course, what fascinates him most is not the thrill of adrenal hormone burst after the big victory, but the process of directing the brothers to win the battle. The feeling of giving orders and the brothers would dare not obey is really wonderful. No wonder the boss often said that big men should drunk lying on the knees of beautiful women and wake up to the world. I didn't understand the meaning of what the boss said before, but after he really commanded the battle alone, Mad Bull understood some of the meaning of this sentence. Beauty's knees are boring. The few women in my family are enough, so I don't need to find any more women. But when one's own will is communicated through orders and is thoroughly executed by his brothers, the feeling of ordering the world is really wonderful. Well, there is still a long way to go in ordering the world, but being able to make hundreds of people obey their orders and obey their own will is fascinating enough. And if you can really let the whole world obey your own will as the boss said, how wonderful is that feeling? Well, this kind of thing can only be done by the boss. And I am afraid that even Chief Karaklilu can't do it. That one can order the world without seeking truth. As long as he can follow the boss and order more soldiers, that is enough. The taste of power is really unstoppable. After feeling the taste of power without any restriction for the first time here, Mad Cow was stuck in it and almost couldn't get out of it. Over there, in the Gaoshu tribe thousands of miles away from this battle, the stone bears are a little bit bigger than one head. He didn't expect that bighorn sheep turned out to be like a rock in a pit, smelly and hard. Although the previous contact with this guy was a very unpleasant process, but the two people can't meet each other. Now, the entire Cree tribe has been defeated by the expeditionary army, and even their chiefs are willing to submit, but why is this guy still gritted his teeth and insisted on not submitting? If this guy does have the potential to grow into a handsome talent, Shi Xiong would not waste his spit with this guy who has failed many times in his own hands. But if he just gave up on this guy, Shi Xiong would be a little bit reluctant. Bighorn sheep, don't think he and he were enemies from different tribes before, but this guy does have good potential. At least from Shi Xiong's point of view, this guy's potential should be on the same level as Joraklilu. It's just that Joraklilu's talent potential lies in internal affairs, while the talent potential of this bighorn lies in war. If you can recruit this guy, Then there will be Jolakrilu as a helper, and the bighorn sheep will help, so it will be much easier for you. It is with this idea that Shi Xiong decided to continue grinding with this smelly and hard guy today. Yes, in Shi Xiong's view, persuading the bighorn sheep is actually a process of slow grinding. And after so many days of grinding, Shi Xiong also gradually felt a vague feeling in his heart that this guy would definitely be taken down by himself. It's just that I still lack an opportunity to completely impress the bighorn sheep. Once you find this opportunity, it shouldn't be difficult to take down this smelly and hard guy. Stone Bear pondered, while taking Tep to the place where the bighorn sheep lived. After returning from the Cherokee court, Shi Xiong did not deliberately imprison the bighorn sheep. The bighorn sheep is also very bachelor. He set up a shed next to the Gaoshu tribe with wood as the skeleton. Then he went out to hunt and kill some animals. He peeled off the furs of these animals and put them on the ground after tanning, put it on the shelf and cover it with thatch mixed with yellow mud. This kind of small shed is small and cramped, not to mention that it is compared with the red brick, rock and cement houses that the Gaoshu tribes live in now, even if it is inferior to the wooden houses that they lived in before far away. But the bighorn sheep insists on living here, and he simply ignores the spacious and bright houses prepared for him by the tribe. And when this guy was building this small shed, he resolutely rejected the help of many members of the Gaoshu tribe, including the old Wood family. In his words, "I can make it myself where I live, no need for others to help." The bad temper of the bighorn sheep is evident. Because Shi Xiong had explained in advance, the clansmen of Gaoshu tribe didn't care much about this guy who didn't know what was good or bad. Otherwise, according to the temper of the guys of Gaoshu tribe, this kind of guy would have been beaten out long ago. Shi Xiong was rejected 4 or 5 times in a row by this smelly and hard bighorn sheep. Then Shi Xiong dried this guy for 3 full days, and today he decided to persuade this guy again. The bighorn sheep shed is located on the edge of the tribe, and a little outside is the training ground for the expeditionary army. At present, most of the expeditionary soldiers have not returned on the territory of the Cree tribe, so the 500 expeditionary soldiers who came back with the Stone Bear are the ones who trained the 2,000 recruits. But the training for the past 2 days has also stopped. www.wuxiaspa.com 2,000 recruits, followed by the clansmen of the Gaoshu tribe and the 500 veterans of the expeditionary army, are busy with the autumn harvest. Therefore, the training ground has become very deserted these days, and the familiar slogans in the past have completely disappeared. When Shi Xiong came to the bighorn sheep's shed, he found that this guy was holding a leather bag containing high spirits in one hand, and a beef leg bone that had been gnawed in the other hand. His mouth was full of oil and his face looked like eating and drinking. "It's very high." Seeing Shi Xiong coming over, a rare smile appeared on the bighorn sheep's face, which made Shi Xiong feel excited. "Master Guardian, can you show me the kind of weapon you used to defeat me?" The bighorn sheep took a sip of wine, wiped the corner of his mouth with the back of his hand, and asked Shi Xiong a little drunk. Shi Xiong's heart moved again, and asked, "Why do you want to see the throwing barrel?" "Oh, is that kind of weapon that defeats me called a grenadier?" The bighorn sheep burped loudly. "Then can I take a closer look at this grenadier?" Then, he shook his head. "Why do you have to show me that kind of bullet-throwing barrel? Otherwise, this thorn in my heart will never be pulled out. I just want to figure out why this weapon can take my 20,000 yuan. The soldiers were defeated and lost. If I don't understand, I won't close my eyes when I die." https:// Genius only remembers the address of this site in 1 second. Mobile version reading URL, chapter 369. Overjoyed, the words of bighorn sheep made Shi Xiong a happy heart. Obviously, this guy who didn't get oil and salt before, and was stink and harder than the stone in the pit, seemed to have gotten the hang of it, otherwise he would not say such a thing. You need to know the previous few contacts. This guy is just like a dumb man. Don't talk. He hasn't even said a word. It made Shi Xiong's previous 3 persuasion as if he was performing a stand-up comedy. If you want to persuade someone, the most terrifying situation is this: people don't care about anything you say, and they don't agree or disagree. Anyway, They treat you as a gust of wind. Maybe what you say is that people don't even have a left ear, it has never been in the right ear. This is the most thing. So Shi Xiong tried to persuade this guy 3 times before, but in the end he could only be defeated. This is the first time Stone Bear has encountered Waterloo since he traveled to this age. To use a famous saying in later generations, that is, although you have defeated me physically, you can never defeat me mentally. Shi Xiong encountered this kind of situation with Bighorn Sheep before. But today, Bighorn Sheep is obviously different. At least he spoke, and he still took the initiative to speak. There are only 2 possibilities in this situation. The first is that this guy has changed his mind and intends to surrender. The second is that this guy is born and die. No one can say that it is not easy. As long as he finds out something, he will happily let himself die. Shi Xiong naturally does not believe that the Bighorn Sheep's changes today are due to the second possibility. In his opinion, if this guy wants to end up on his own, he might have already clicked himself on his way back to the Cherokee royal court. Will he still have to wait until now? The only possibility is that this guy has changed his mind. 2. After this guy came to the Gaoshu tribe, except for the shack where he lived, he claimed to have taken good care of all other aspects. This guy is a good drinker, so the drinks in the tribe, whether it is high or low, are open to this guy. This guy wants to eat good food, so okay, a few cooks trained in the tribe make him stir-fry every day. This guy wanted to watch the training. Shi Xiong did not avoid him, but generously trained the recruits in front of him. It can be said that, except for the guy who didn't want to warm the bed, Shi Xiong almost met his other requirements. Is there anything he is not satisfied with? Anyway, Shi Xiong prides himself that he has done his best. It's okay if you want to see the grenadier, but that is the core secret of our tribe and even our entire Cherokee tribe. Are you sure you want to see it? Stone Xiong found a clean big rock in front of the Bighorn Sheep, sit up and said calmly. Why not? Anyway, I'm like this now, what if you let me see? The Bighorn Sheep took another sip of wine. Shi Xiong suddenly discovered that this guy's alcohol volume was actually very good. The height of this leather bag was close to 2 caddies, but judging from the deflation of the leather bag, this guy drank at least 1 caddy of wine. Now, he can stay sober now, which is enough to prove his drinking capacity. It's not that you are not allowed to watch it, but if you watch the thing, you can only end up with 2. I know, one is death, and the other is to submit to you completely. Does it make any difference to me? Bighorn Sheep stared at Shi Xiong's eyes and said, because of drinking. The bottom of his eyes was a little red. You know what I am thinking. Bighorn Sheep, although we were opponents before, at that time our 2 tribes were hostile to each other. That's why we were able to become opponents. And don't you say that you are holding 20,000 grams. The Li warriors are active at the border between our 2 tribes for hunting or playing. I know what you think. Don't you just want to act first to be stronger? Strike first? Bighorn Sheep's eyes lit up. This sentence makes a lot of sense. But even if I want to strike first to be stronger, our 20,000 people are not beaten by your 2,000 people. Falling flowers and flowing water? Even our entire tribe has been beaten down by you. The Bighorn Sheep sighed. Shi Xiong shrugged non-committal and said, actually, when you commanded the Yukai people to chase and intercept my expedition team at the place of the Yukai people, you should have known that I had a number of powerful weapons in my hand, and this kind of weapon is just throwing. The cartridge is a kind of weapon that is not available in this era, let alone you. Even if the Vasikas come, they are no different from you in the face of this kind of weapon. This ... Well, did you develop this kind of bullet toss? Bighorn Sheep seemed to have no intention of talking about it anymore, and changed the subject very bluntly. Yes. It was indeed developed by me. To be precise, I came up with these things under the guidance of the Supreme Sun God. Not only the throwing barrels, but also everything you see now. When I was seriously injured, the Supreme Sun personally pointed me. I just realized the will of the Sun in reality, well, including my head. Shi Xiong pointed to his head and showed a sincere smile. So, is it true that the outside world said that you have been personally pointed out by the Supreme Sun God? The bighorn sheep seemed to be very interested in this matter. "I'm telling the truth, believe it or not. It's your own business. Anyway, 2 years ago, I was a fool. There can be countless people around to prove this. But now, do you look at me like a fool? And this musket, all that you have seen, do you think I can get these without the guidance of the gods?" The bighorn sheep was silent, but it seemed that he really believed this. No matter how clever he is only a native Indian living in this land. His insights limit his imagination. How could he think that there is such a thing as crossing in this world? Even if he still has doubts in his heart, he can't explain everything in front of him, including everything he has seen before. And who can do all this, except for those who are personally directed by the gods? Who else can? I remember the last time you came to see me, you once said that on this land, all people with black hair, dark eyes and yellow skin, regardless of their tribe, are actually a family. Why do you say that? The bighorn sheep asked suddenly. It's very simple. The continent we live in is a very vast continent, so vast that you can't imagine. Whether it's the territory occupied by your Cree people or the territory occupied by our Cherokee people, on this continent it's just a small part, a very small part, and the people living on this continent are people with black hair, dark eyes and yellow skin just like you and me. We are from a common the ancestors of people, therefore, we are the real family. Although we are divided into hundreds of tribes because of this relationship, this does not obliterate the fact that we have a common ancestor. And those yellow hairs, the blue-eyed and white-skinned Vasiku, they are not a family with us. They are our real enemies, because they want to control this continent, they want to seize this continent, they want to make this continent original the owner, that is, we kill all of us. After a pause, Shi Xiong looked at the bighorn sheep and said sincerely, "I didn't know all this before. But when I was seriously injured and unconscious www.wuxiasp.com the Supreme Sun told me, the Sun he even showed me the situation of this continent hundreds of years later. At that time, there were only a few tens of thousands of compatriots with black hair, dark eyes and yellow skin like you and me. And now, there are only tens of thousands of people left on this continent. Our compatriots on this continent are close to 3 million people. Our compatriots, our descendants and grandchildren will eventually be killed by those Vasichus, and we will completely lose ownership of this land." The bighorn sheep frowned, and seemed to be worried about the scene. Shi Xiong said. After a long time, he raised his head and asked, "Is that why you didn't kill more Cree tribesmen?" "Yes. We are all compatriots. When a war breaks out, there is no way to avoid killing, but when I have an overwhelming advantage, I will not easily kill any of my compatriots, because the number of our compatriots was originally small, and I still want to keep some more to deal with those Vasichus in the future." The bighorn sheep became silent again, but his eyes flickered. After a long time, he sighed and stood up and said, "Then, my honorable guardian, please take me to see the bullets. I want to know as much as possible about the true power of the bullet-throwing barrel, so that when I serve you, I can better control this weapon." Ishikama is overjoyed. https://genius only remembers the address of this site in 1 second. Mobile version reading URL, Chapter 370, Brothers, Big Bear. "Is that guy done?" Kuaoma looked at the bighorn sheep enthusiastically watching the bullets in the distance, and asked Shi Xiong in a low voice. "Well, it should be done. This guy seems to have figured out something, so today I will take him here to see the grenadier." Shi Xiong hugged his arms and looked at the bighorn sheep in the distance, with a faint look on his face, said with a smile, "I think you'd better take a good look at this guy. I always feel that there is a kind of ambition in this guy's eyes, which makes me a little uncomfortable." Kuaoma frowned and said, "The bullet is ours, core weapon. If this guy can see clearly, then." Shi Xiong smiled and waved his hand and said, "Kuaoma, I have told you several times that as a leader, if you are a leader, you must not use suspects and employ people without doubt. This is what a qualified leader should have mind." After a pause, Shi Xiong looked at the bighorn sheep in the distance and continued, "I admit that this bighorn sheep is a guy with great ambitions, But if you think about it the other way around, if he doesn't have such ambitions, why should I use it? It's not a bad thing for a person to have ambition, as long as his ambition can be guided and used in the right place, then this is a person who can be reused. Of course, if his ambition is crooked, I can get him over. Can kill him. Kuei-ma, do you understand what I mean? Kuei-ma is Shi Xiong's closest friend and brother. He has been with Shi Xiong for the past 2 years. Shi Xiong has taught him many things, and he is also developing his strategic vision. Kuei-ma has grown up very well. Kuei-ma naturally understood the meaning of his boss's words, but he still frowned and shook his head slightly and said, "Dragon Bear, I know why you say that, but I don't feel very good about this guy. At least I won't trust him completely for a while, but I'll keep an eye on him for you." Shi Xiong smiled and patted Kuei-ma on the shoulder, quickly changed the subject and asked, "Your third child is about to be born, right?" These words made Kuei-ma proudly puff up his chest. "Yes, if there is nothing unexpected, my third child will be born at the end of this month." Hong Yun said, "My third child should still be a boy." Kuei-ma said this with great pride, especially when he said it to the stone bear. It was more fulfilling. Dolly Bear, a friend and good brother who has grown up since childhood, has been riding the dust in the past 2 years since his inexplicable awakening the previous year, making Kuei-ma, who has been struggling to catch up with his brother, feel a little desperate. It is no exaggeration to say that the good brother Dolly Xiong showed himself a state of crushing in all aspects. Although Kuei-ma knows that this is a good brother who has been under the guidance of the Supreme Sun God, the good brother who can be stupid and needs his own protection and care has now become a big figure that even the chieftain must attach great importance to. Kuei-ma said in his heart that he does not envy that is false of. But Kuei-ma also has its own pride, that is, although his good brother has crushed him in all aspects, but only in terms of heirs, he absolutely crushes his good brother. In terms of age, Kuei-ma and Great Bear are both 18 years old this year. They are already fully grown-ups among North American Indian tribes. 18 is generally the father of 1 or 2 children. But the guy named Great Bear is very good in every aspect, but he is far behind himself in terms of heirs. Although this guy had just accepted the girl of Green Skylark, his child hadn't been seen yet. As for myself, I became a father at the age of 15, and the next 2 sons. Now this third son is about to be born again, and I am the father of 3 children. At this point, the guy Dolly Xiong is far from him. Looking at the arrogant look of the good brother, Shi Xiong couldn't help but smile. But he has to admit that he is indeed inferior to his good brother in this respect. He will be the father of 3 children immediately, but he doesn't even have a child. Should I work harder when I go back? Thinking of the graceful body of Green Skylark, Shi Xiong only felt a fire in his heart. Seeing the good brother stunned, Kuei-ma knew that he could no longer stimulate this guy from this aspect, so he secretly changed the subject, pointed to a few tribal women holding bulls in the distance, and said, "Strong bear, the kind you said. What cowpox can really prevent the terrible plague? By the way, what is the name of the plague you are talking about?" "Smallpox." Shi Xiong's face suddenly became serious. "Kuei-ma, you must pay attention to this issue. This kind of plague called smallpox is not a joke. Once infected, it is almost the result of death and no life, especially children and women. Because of physical reasons, it is more difficult to resist this terrible plague. Therefore, vaccination is a must." Seeing what Shi Xiong said was serious, Kuei-ma hit a joke for no reason. "Dalich, once this kind of smallpox is infected, it is really impossible to treat it." Ishikama nodded heavily, although he had never seen smallpox in his previous life. To be precise, smallpox had disappeared on this planet a few years before he was born. But this does not prevent Shi Xiong from understanding the horror of this malignant infectious disease from various materials. If adult men are infected with smallpox, www.wuxiaspot.com, they may be able to get half of the survival rate by virtue of their physique, but children and women, especially children, once infected with smallpox, it is almost hopeless. Even in later generations, when medical technology is so advanced, there is no exact cure for smallpox. Although some medical treatments can cure smallpox, they are quite laborious. And in this era without any antibiotics, it is almost impossible to cure people infected with smallpox. Infected patients can only rely on luck to resist this malignant infectious disease. Therefore, in this era, smallpox can only be prevented but cannot be cured. The importance of vaccinations immediately became apparent. Quick, horse, listen to me, hurry up and vaccinate your eldest and second child and your wife with vaccinia. You'd better get vaccinated too. Look at me, I have already finished the vaccination, although I have had a fever for 2 days, but it can completely prevent smallpox. As he said, Shi Xiong took off half of his clothes, exposing the deltoid muscles on the lower part of his shoulders, where there was a fresh scar, which was left when he was inoculated with cowpox. Okay, can't I support you? Isn't it okay to take the guys at home to vaccinate cowpox? Kuwema knows what kind of character his good brother is. Since he said so, it would be the best. It's better to do what he says, otherwise this guy will go crazy. https://genius only remembers the address of this site in 1 second. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 371, Needle pierced after loading rifled gun. Looking at the figure of the fast horse going away, Shi Xiong shook his head helplessly and smiled bitterly. Kuwema is a good brother, even if the stone bears the soul passed through, he has to admit. Shi Xiong can clearly feel Kuwema's care and concern for the stupid head. This is not pretending, it is from the heart. And Shi Xiong feels it very clearly. The memory from this body made Shi Xiong very clear how carefree Kuwema, a happy young man, was before, but now, he is trying to catch up with himself, and he is trying to make himself in various ways become more powerful. Based on this is a very, very good brother. Kuwema's worries about bighorn sheep, Shi Xiong can also understand. If it's him, he might also have such worries. After all, he was not from a tribe before, and he had forged such a big grievance on the battlefield. But Shi Xiong believed his own judgment. The bighorn sheep guy really changed. As for the bullet-throwing problem that Kuwema was worried about, Shi Xiong thought it was not a problem. Although the grenadier is so powerful, it can be called the of war on the battlefield in this era, but this thing still has limitations of this kind. For example, the range, such as the supply of ammunition. It is undeniable that the bullet grenades that are 150 years ahead of this era have no solution in this era. But in the same way, this thing is not a real artillery or mortar after all, and its limitations still exist. First of all, there is the issue of range. Even if the propellant of the grenadier is replaced with non-flooded gunpowder, the maximum effective range is 700 meters. Although this distance is undoubtedly the dominant distance in this era, Shi Xiong always feels that it is still not enough. The second issue is the supply of ammunition. The fired grenades that can bloom. In order to stabilize the trajectory, 4 stabilized tails are installed on the rear of the grenade, which greatly increases the difficulty of casting the shell. Coupled with the impact fuse, makes the production of the grenade even more difficult. In the 5 months before the expedition to the Cree tribe, hundreds of workers turned around and produced 14,000 grenades. This number seems to be a lot, but on average there are only 80 grenades per grenadier. At the rate of fire of 20 grenades per minute, these grenades are not enough for a grenadier to fire for 4 minutes at full capacity. What about? So the grenade fired by the grenadier is actually far from enough. Even now Jack Williams and David Adian have been working hard to improve the grenade production line, but in a short period of time, if the grenadier unit is to become the real strategic core, it is still choking. Therefore, Shi Xiong is now preparing to develop a new generation of rifles. With the successful development of Thunder/Acid/Mercury and Flash Hider, the idea of developing a new generation of acupuncture after loading rifle can be realized. Originally, Ishikawa's plan was to wait for the Ferguson rifle to be equipped to a certain level, and then begin to develop the famous Min rifle. After all, it is not so difficult to modify the Miner rifle with the existing Ferguson rifle, and if the transformation is successful, the upgraded mini rifle of the Ferguson rifle will greatly increase the effective range of the musket. The effective range of the minor rifle in the original historical time and space can exceed 500 meters. This distance is already an extremely terrifying number. If the expeditionary force can have 2,000 soldiers with minor rifles, then Shi Xiong is confident that with 2,000 musketeers, he can single-handedly challenge any European country now. The most important thing is that it is not difficult to modify the minor rifle with a Ferguson rifle. Once it can be modified, the tribe will not waste much. This was originally Shi Xiong's plan. As the saying goes, plans can never keep up with changes. Shi Xiong is now facing such an embarrassing situation. Shi Xiong did not expect Brother Li to be so ferocious. He would get thunder/acid/mercury and flash hider in a short period of time. With the flash hider, the biggest difficulty in the introduction of acupuncture reloading rifled guns has been smoothed out, because with the flash hider, bullets with fixed gunpowder can be developed, so the acupuncture reloading rifled gun is nothing problem. The current flintlock rifles, including the latest Ferguson rifles, use the lead shot plus bulk black powder charging method, even if the propellant of each bullet is now fixed, but when it is loaded, it is fired. The medicine and lead pellets are scattered into the barrel of the gun. Although the Ferguson rifle is loaded with rear loading, the firing speed per minute is nearly double that of the front loading gun, but this bulk loading method is still relatively slow. However, because they are all flintlock guns now, the propellant in the barrel needs external flint to ignite, so the guns of this era must use this method of propellant bulk. Otherwise, if the propellant is wrapped in the shell, the fire simply cannot ignite the propellant, and the bullet cannot be shot out of the barrel. Before the flash hider was made out, even if the military of European countries had long thought of loading ammunition, the real loading of gunpowder bullets was useless at all. Flash hider appeared, so the fixed ammunition will inevitably appear. In the original historical time and space, the flash hat would not be invented until half a century later. Now the European armies do not have flash hiders, and they all use guns before firing. So when Brother Li made the flash hiders, he had been ahead of the most advanced countries in Europe for half a century. The flash hider appeared, and Shi Xiong planned to use it on the bullet grenade at first, and he did use it www.wuxiaspa.com. But the biggest application of the flash hider is still in the fixed ammunition. No matter it is the fixed load ammunition of the metal shell or the fixed load ammunition of the paper shell is inseparable from the flash hider. Although the bullet throwing barrel is very good, no one can stop it in this era, but it is not as convenient as a rifle after all. So Shi Xiong is now considering whether to make fixed load ammunition and a real needle-punched rear-loading rifled gun. Shi Xiong knows very well that once this needle-punched after-loading rifled gun, which uses a paper cartridge case for fixed ammunition, is equipped with the army of the Gaoshu tribe, then the army of the Gaoshu tribe will have the biggest cornerstone for the hegemony of North America. Even the United States of America can't compete with the High Tree tribe army that has a needle-pierced rear-mounted rifled gun. Can't fight at all. Even if the American army has a Kentucky rifle with an effective range of less than 200 meters, how can it fight with a needle-pierced reloading rifle with an effective range of up to 600 meters? Moreover, the rate of fire of a needle-punched rear-mounted rifled gun is generally about 12 rounds per minute, which is twice as fast as that of a Ferguson rifle. The effective range of this rifle is more than 3 times that of other rifles, and the rate of fire is still so high. The High Tree tribe army with this rifle can completely use kite-flying tactics to kill the enemy alive. You can't hit me, but I can hit you in any position. How to fight such a battle? https://genius only remembers the address of this site in 1 second. Mobile version reading URL. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 372, Fatal Flaw. Needle-punched rear-loading rifled gun is also called rotary rear-pull bolt rifle. Because this is the world's first rifle with a rotating back-pull action, This rifle will have 3 names. The first name is naturally a needle-punched rear-loading rifled rifle, and the second name is to commemorate that this rifle is the world's first revolving rear pull-bolt rifle, so this rifle has the second one. First name. As for the third name of this rifle, it is also famous, that is the Dreiser rifle. On the 11th and 20th of 1787, in the small town of Summerdane in the electorate of Mainz, a baby boy who was waiting to be fed was born in a locksmith's family. The birth of baby boy brought endless happiness to this ordinary family. As a locksmith father, he hopes that the newly born boy can take over his clothes and become a locksmith in the small town. After all, in this turbulent era, although the income of locksmiths is not very high, it is still a stable industry. If children can learn their own crafts in the future, at least they don't have to worry about eating and drinking. It's just the father of the child who didn't expect that his son did not inherit his locksmith mantle when he grew up, but plunged into the work of weapon research and development. When the child grew up to 22 years old, he went to a French gun factory and spent 5 years experimenting with several rear-mounted rifled guns. But it is a pity that these breech guns tested by this boy who has grown into an adult youth have not achieved much success. The failure did not discourage the young man. He then returned to his hometown of Smilda, and opened a factory in his hometown, using the flash hider technology he just developed to produce flash hiders. The production of flash hider has brought him huge benefits, but he is not obsessed with huge benefits, because he always has a desire in his heart to develop a real rifle that can surpass any rifle in the world. Breech gun. It is with the support of this belief that he has not stopped the research and development of the breech gun since he opened his own flash hider processing factory in 1814. It took him a full 26 years, and finally in 1836, completed the design of the whole needle gun with ammunition loaded from the back. However, at the time, rifles were loaded with ammunition from the muzzle. Loading ammunition from the back is undoubtedly a very non-mainstream approach, as if the Ferguson rifle developed by Lieutenant Ferguson was ridiculed by the British. The Ferguson rifle, the world's first breech gun, was finally dead. In those days, rear-loading guns were very unpopular. Even when a Swiss military delegation visited Prussia, the Swiss general who reviewed the Prussian rear-loading troops walked and shouted, "Eating with your mouth is noble." Pointing to front-loading guns, Swiss shooters have never been humble enough to use a NEMA gun, rear-loading guns, loaded from the rear to shoot. This shows how unwelcome it was to install guns at the time. However, the Prussian government recognized the superiority of this non-mainstream rifle, so the government immediately acquired this invention and used it as the most advanced secret weapon for secret development. In 1841, after the Dresser solved several key technologies of the needle-firing rifle, the Dresser rifle was immediately adopted by the Prussian army and installed under the name M1841. This is the origin of the famous Dreiser rifle. When Shi Xiong decided to switch to the expeditionary rifle, the first thing he thought of was this famous Dreiser rifle. Compared with the rotating locking mechanism of the Ferguson rifle, the rotating back pull bolt used by the Dreiser rifle is undoubtedly much more advanced, and the design of this rotating back pull bolt has also become the starting point of modern rifle bolts. It is no exaggeration to say that, including the era before the Shi Xiong crossed, the rifle guns used by the armies of all countries in the world were almost all extended from the basis of this rotating rear pull gun. Like D.A. Mingling's Mauser rifle, Enfield rifle and Mosin-Nagant rifle, its bolt mechanism design principle is based on this rotating rear pull bolt mechanism designed by Dreiser. This shows the status of this bolt in the history of rifles. In fact, the Dreiser rifle is not the world's first mass-equipped rear-loading gun. The Ferguson rifle came out 70 years before the Dreiser rifle appeared. The M1819 rifle produced by the Americans in 1819, also called the Hall rifle, produced as many as 20,000. It's just that even if the Hall rifle came out, American soldiers at that time were still accustomed to using front-loading guns. This led to the production of as many as 20,000 Hall rifles in military factories, but most of these rifles were in existence. The original factory state The reason why the Dreiser rifle is so famous and known as the world's first real rear-loading gun is because this rifle with a rotating rear pull bolt has been proven on the battlefield. Whether it is the Putin War or the Austrian War, the strength of the Dreiser rifle is well known, especially in the Prussian-Austrian War. Prussian soldiers armed with Dreiser rifles defeated the very powerful Austrian Empire in just 7 weeks. Like the Ferguson rifle, the Stone Bear, a puppet army fan from later generations, wanted to replace the Expeditionary Army rifle. Naturally, he thought of this rifle that will only shine in 100 years. After all, whether it is a revolving back-pull gun or a fixed ammunition, this is the future development direction of firearms. Before the appearance of Gauss and energy rifles, as long as the guns were powered by chemical energy, they were almost all developed in this way. Although a rifle with a rotating rear pull bolt action, the requirements for the barrel will become very high. The cast barrel used before can be used at a rate of fire of 6 or 7 rounds per minute, but when the rate of fire reaches at 12 rounds per minute, the cast barrel can no longer be used, otherwise it will easily explode. Fortunately, thanks to the efforts of the 4 alchemists, a machine tool for boring barrels has been developed. Although the efficiency is still a bit low, the lack of efficiency can be compensated by quantity. The barrel problem is not the main problem. Although the Dreiser rifle is great, it is not without its shortcomings. This shortcoming is mainly due to the design defects of the ammunition and the firing needle. The Dreiser rifle adopts the firing principle of acupuncture. This firing principle is to pack the projectiles, detonators and black powder in a cylindrical paper shell, which is a fixed paper shell bullet, but the detonator is not installed in the rear of the shell, but in the middle of the bottom of the projectile. When the trigger is pulled, www.wuxiaspa.com, the force of the spring releases the slender firing needle, which pierces the bottom of the shell of the gun cartridge from the front end of the bolt, and moves forward until it reaches the detonator at the bottom of the projectile. Detonate it, and then ignite the black powder in the paper shell to complete a firing. This firing method is a great way, but in Dreiser's design, the firing needle of this bolt has a fatal problem. That is, it is too long. Because the flash hider of the fixed paper shell bullet developed by Dreiser is at the front end of the propellant, the firing needle must be designed to be longer, so that the propellant that penetrates the back of the paper shell can hit the front when it is fired on the flash hider. But then the problem comes. The wrong length of the firing pin will make the firing pin often contact the hot gunpowder and cause damage to the firing pin. If it is not a big problem in normal times, but if on the battlefield, the soldiers are about to shoot, and the firing needle suddenly breaks, wouldn't it be fatal? And the Dreiser rifle and the Ferguson rifle have the same shortcomings. That is, the airtightness of the breech is very poor, and the gunpowder gas emitted will interfere with the shooter's aim, and even burn the skin in serious cases. These are the shortcomings of the Dreiser rifle. Since it is necessary to change the outfit, it is necessary to make up for all these shortcomings, so that the rifle that the Expeditionary Army changes into a rifle with few shortcomings. At the very least, there can be no such major fatal flaws. https://genius only remembers the address of this site in 1 second. Mobile version reading URL, Chapter 373, Improvements to the New Gun. It is not difficult to make up for these 2 shortcomings of the Dreiser rifle. The first thing that needs to be changed is to install paper shell ammunition. Dreiser invented this fixed-packed paper shell ammunition. The detonator, that is, the flash hider, is installed behind the warheads and on the top of the propellant's head. Although the bullets of later modern rifles are fixed-loaded metal ammunition, the principle is actually the same as that of fixed-loaded paper shell ammunition. The propellant is placed in the shell, and the top of the shell is inlaid with the warhead. When the propellant in the shell is ignited by the flash cap, the explosive propellant will shoot the warhead out to complete a firing. Is also the process of completing a firing of the paper shell ammunition. The difference between the 2 bullets is the material of the shell. But no matter what kind of ammunition, it must be fired by the flash cap to ignite the propellant. However, the bullets used in later modern rifles, The flash hider is at the bottom of the cartridge case, and for the paper shell bullet developed by Dreiser, the flash hider is between the propellant and the warhead. Modern bullets, when the firing pin hits the flash hider at the bottom of the bullet, the propellant will explode in the shell, which has no effect on the firing pin. For this paper shell bullet developed by Dreiser, the tip of the firing pin needs to pass through the propellant to fire the flasher. In other words, when the propellant of this paper shell bullet is detonated, the first one to be injured by the deflagration of the propellant is the needle. A barrel that is so thick cannot withstand the high heat and pressure generated when the propellant explodes, let alone a very thin firing needle. Therefore, in order to make up for this defect, the first thing to change is the design of the paper shell bullet. With the technological power of this era, it is simply impossible to produce that kind of copper shell bullets or copper-clad steel bullets. In fact, even in the 21st century, there are fewer than 30 countries in the world that can produce copper bullets, and there are only 13 countries that can produce shells and bullets at the same time. So, bullets with fixed metal shells are not so easy to get out. Shi Xiong suspected that even if he had produced the anti-aircraft gun, he would probably not be able to produce bullets with metal shells. Although this is a bit exaggerated, there is no doubt that the production of bullets with metal shells is absolutely impossible in this era. Then, the production of paper bullet shells is a must. Compared with metal bullet shell bullets, the production process of paper bullet shell bullets is not so difficult. The bottom is inlaid with a flash hider cardboard tube and a fixed amount of propellant, and a round-head cylindrical lead bullet is inserted in the front to complete a paper shell bullet. Even if it is made by hand, one person can make a lot of bullets a day. If you use a rotating rear pull gun machine, because of the processing technology of this kind of machine, the confidentiality of the guns produced at the beginning is not good, but it is always much better than the rotation locking mechanism of the Ferguson rifle. In this way, the amount of gunpowder that is fixed will also be reduced a lot. When using the Saint-Étienne rifle seized from the French in the past, the ratio of black powder was not correct, so the amount of propellant required for each bullet was about 123 grains, which is about 8 grams. The Ferguson rifle used by the Expeditionary Army now uses black powder with a perfect formula as the propellant, so the propellant quantity per bullet is about 100 grains, which is about 6.5 grams. And if you use a rifle with a revolving back pull bolt action, then the propellant contained in the paper shell of each bullet can be reduced to 70 grains, which is about 4.55 grams. This kind of charge is 30% less than that of the Ferguson rifle, but the effective range of the bullet has increased by 3 times. This is the consequence of technological progress. The charge of one bullet is 2 grams less, and the charge of 100,000 bullets is less than 200 kgs. Don't underestimate this number. 100,000 bullets cause trouble. Calculated according to the intensity of a single force war, 100,000 bullets are not even enough for 2,000 people to fight a low-intensity battle. The amount of ammunition is saved. Not only can the logistics supply be easier, the soldiers can also carry more bullets. The most important thing is that by attaching the flash hider to the bottom of the paper shell bullet, the firing needle can not only shorten the length, but also no longer suffer direct damage from the propellant during firing, and the life of the firing needle will be much longer. Stone bears don't even know why Dreiser developed such a paper shell bullet back then. Is it so difficult to inlay the flash hider on the bottom of the cartridge case? Obviously, the difficulty of inserting the flash hider on the bottom of the cartridge case is not much greater than the difficulty of inserting it on the bottom of the warhead. Solves the bullet problem, and the needle shot problem will be solved by the way. And because the flash hider is inlaid at the bottom of the cartridge case, the firing pin does not need to pierce the propellant to fire the flash hider, so the firing pin can be designed not only to be shorter, but also to be thicker, which prolongs the life of the firing pin many times. These living stone bears just know the principle. If you ask him to do it by himself, he must not be able to do it. But it doesn't matter, there are 4 great alchemists. These 4 guys are getting more and more capable now. They even have a boring machine for boring rifle barrels. It should be no problem to make a bullet machine. What Shi Xiong needs to do is just to tell them the working principle of this rotating back-pull gun, and then these four guys will work together to use the paper shell bullets that meet the requirements and the new rifle gun in the shortest time. From Shi Xiong has no doubt about this. As for how to reduce the problem of air leakage, this is not a difficult task. Although due to the limitation of processing technology, it is still impossible to produce the excellent airtight action of the later modern rifles. But there is no way to solve the air leakage of the action. In the original historical time and space www.wuxiaspa.com 90 years later, the Frenchman Anthony Alphonso Chasepo will develop a rear-loading gun, which is named Chasepo rifle. The working principle of this rifle based on the Dreiser rifle is no different from that of the Dreiser rifle. It is just that when Chasepo developed this rifle, he fully considered the defects of the Dreiser rifle and fixed the paper shell with bullets. The primer was on the bottom of the shell. Shi Xiong's design plan to transform the Dreiser rifle was actually derived from the design of the Chasepo rifle. It's just that the most convincing innovation of the Chasepo rifle is the use of a rubber airlocking sleeve to prevent gas leakage on the surface of the bolt, which greatly reduces the air leakage of the bolt. Although this method is not perfect, because the rubber shrinks and hardens due to the action of gas after each shot, and eventually loses its effect, and needs to be replaced at any time. However, compared with the firing pin design of the Dreiser rifle, which is always in deep water, the design is undoubtedly much more perfect. And under the current situation, the design of the Chasepo rifle is undoubtedly more in line with the requirements of the stone bear. After all, long before Columbus discovered the New World, Indians living in Central and South America had begun to use natural rubber. It is not difficult to obtain natural rubber. https://Genius only remembers the address of this site in 1 second. Mobile version reading URL, Chapter 374, Strategic Posture. Stone Bear summoned the four great alchemists, but he did not call Lieutenant Ferguson. It's not that Shi Xiong didn't call him, but the second lieutenant of the Royal Army, who has always called himself the boss, when he heard about the development of a new rifle, he just considered it for a moment and decisively refused to participate in the development of the new gun. This rifle can come out with my help and be named after my last name. This has fulfilled my lifelong dream. Although the new rifle developed by you, the boss, is definitely stronger than the Ferguson rifle, I can't get involved again. This is a secret belonging to your Gaoshu tribe. I am a British soldier who is not suitable to participate in the research and development of such new guns. Well, just like your grenadiers, I'd better not get involved. Lieutenant Ferguson, who was holding a Ferguson rifle, said firmly with a smile on his face. Even Shi Xiong didn't know how to refute such a reason. Obviously, his little brother had a desire to go home in his heart, so he said that. After all, this guy has been here for 2 years, and no matter how free it is, it's not as good as his own home. Regarding this, Shi Xiong's heart was silent except for silence. But that's okay. If Lieutenant Ferguson is really involved in the development of the new gun, then he will have to know how long he will be able to leave here. It is estimated that he is also waiting for the development of new rifles, because once a new generation of rifles is successfully developed, then the Ferguson rifle, which is a generation behind, will not become a core secret of high scorers, and he can leave here freely. Shi Xiong knew what Lieutenant Ferguson thought. No wonder he would do something like unfired shot in the original historical time and space. Now, although he has not made the unfired shot in the face of Washington, he would rather stay here alone for 2 years in order to keep the secrets of the Gaoshu tribe. Patrick Ferguson is really a gentleman. Ferguson's non-participation in the research and development of the new gun helped Shi Xiong relieve some of his concerns. He was discussing with the 4 major alchemists. Well, to be precise, it should be a week after pointing them to them before throwing all the work to them, the 4 of them, and then he was about to go to the east of the tribe to take a look. Shi Xiong does not need to worry about the development of the new gun. Shi Xiong is confident. Under his guidance, The four major alchemists have accumulated experience in the development and production of the Ferguson rifle, which will make the development of the new rifle, it's a lot easier. Especially the revolving back-pull gun is absolutely impossible to develop like Dreiser in the original historical time and space for 22 years. Shi Xiong estimated that given these four guys 2 months, the four of them will be able to come up with sample guns. This is not Shi Xiong's boasting, it is that he who has the golden finger is really too powerful in the development of new guns. He might hesitate to let Shi Xiong make some M16 or AK-47, but Shi Xiong really knows how it works with this rifle made in the 19th century. The specific test of the sample gun: there are 4 crazy experimental dogs here, and the sample guns are estimated to be slow in the 2 months. The development of the new rifle is not in a hurry, but for the actions of the Pointons in the east, we can't wait any longer. The Cherokee killed a large tribe with a population of 100,000 with a mere 2,000 people. In just one battle, the army of 20,000 elite fighters was destroyed. This matter has now begun, it spread among the surrounding tribes. After all, the expeditionary army has no ability and it is impossible to kill all the Carry people. Therefore, as long as someone is there, some rumors will spread faster than smallpox. It has been more than 3 months since the expeditionary army defeated the Cree tribe, and it has been more than a month since the Stone Bear returned to the Gaoshu tribe. According to the news from the Red City Alliance, the Mississippi and Kentucky in the west, the Human Coalition has begun to give up attacking the Chickasaws territory, and the Chickasaws are also ready to move, and the Powhatans in the east have shrunk a lot to the east. And the most troublesome thing for Wang Ting, the ally in the north, Shawnee, seemed to be wary of something. The Shawnees are a powerful tribe living in the central and eastern United States and the northern Appalachian Mountains. This powerful is not nonsense. In the heyday of the Shawnees, the territory they controlled extended to Maryland in the east, Alabama in the south, Ohio in the north, and Illinois in the west. In other words, most of the territories controlled by the Cherokee were formerly Shawnee territories. Moreover, the Shawnees have such a vast territory, and their social system is quite strict. Unlike many other tribes, most of their tribes are not loose alliances, but have a very standardized system of affiliation and command, so they have a strong cohesion. So when the Shawnees were at their peak, whether it was the Iroquois alliance further north or the Sioux, Cheyenne, or the Crow tribe, they did not dare to provoke the Shawnee. But as early as 300 or 400 years ago, the Shawnees began to decline from prosperity, and the large areas they originally controlled were also invaded by some tribes that emerged later. For example, the Pointons and the Cree in the south have invaded large tracts of land of the Shawnees. In order to ensure the continuation of the tribe, after the Shawnees began to decline, they took the initiative to form an alliance with the neighboring Cherokees. At that time, the Cherokees were still living in the southeast of the Great Lakes, and their tribe's territory coincided with the Shawnees' border. When the Cherokees were later driven out of the Great Lakes by the Iroquois and Delawares, they passed through the Shawnee territory on their way to the south. The Shawnees gave the Cherokee a lot of help at that time, and when the Cherokees came to Monongahela, the Shawnees who were familiar with the local situation took the initiative to lead the way, and finally helped the Cherokees to control the wave. The Vatan people ran away. Although the Shawnees' royal court near the town of Prophet of later generations was breached by American troops moving westward in 1811. www.wuxiaspa.com. Later, the Shawnee fled northward and were chased by the U.S. troops to Moravian on the north shore of Lake Erie, the chief who killed the Shawnee in the Battle of Thames. But the Shawnee remnant without a leader then retreated to Kansas and Missouri to continue resisting the U.S. Army. Until after the Civil War, Shawnee had to move to live in Oklahoma. Although the current Shawnees are far less powerful than they were in their heyday, they are also a very powerful tribe, and they are also loyal allies of the Cherokee. But now with the defeat of the Carry people, this loyal ally has also acted vigilantly, which is not good news for Shi Xiong. Therefore, Shi Xiong intends to take down the Powhatans as soon as possible, and take the fact that the Cherokee tribe's strength has risen wildly, and make the surrounding tribes more fearful. so that it can provide a good foundation for future combat strategies. Stone Bear didn't want to fight the point when the tribes in the west united to fight the Cherokee tribe, and didn't want the Shawnees in the north to join this alliance because of fear. The rapidly changing strategic situation around has forced Shi Xiong to make a decision as soon as possible. Therefore, the Powhatans in the east must be taken as quickly as possible. https://Genius only remembers the address of this site in 1 second. Mobile version reading URL, Chapter 375, The British with Internal and External Troubles. If the Expeditionary Army can barely be regarded as a first-class army, then these recruits who participated in regular military training more than a month ago are at most second-rate troops. As for other tribes of the Cherokee tribe, they will go to the Cree to replace the Expeditionary Army. Those fighters are properly third-rate troops. There is no way Shi Xiong wants to make all the 30,000 or 40,000 soldiers of the Cherokee tribe into first-class fighters, but Shi Xiong knows that, at least in the last few years, this idea is purely a dream. First-class fighters cannot be trained only by training. Those fighters who have spent the rest of their lives on the battlefield can truly be called first-class fighters. Although these soldiers of the Expeditionary Army have fought dozens of battles, especially those who participated in the Expeditionary Squad before, they have participated in more battles, but Shi Xiong knows that this level of combat is still far from enough for the training of expeditionary soldiers. How much training do you expect from a unit that wins almost by crushing advantage in every battle? But this is also no way, compared to training these elite fighters to become true veterans for the rest of their lives through life and death training on the battlefield. Shi Xiong is more concerned about the life and death of these fighters. There are still few people. So, this person's life is precious, so if you can't die, try not to die. Crush it. It's better than throwing a small life on the battlefield. Now, the Cherokee tribe is continuously sending some third-rate troops to the Cree tribe. Well, anyway, Chief Junaruska will never admit that this is a third-rate unit. In his eyes, from the perspective of Che, the good guys that the Rockies go out are the most elite fighters. According to the original plan, these Cherokee fighters with primitive weapons will eventually succeed the Expeditionary Army, and then the Expeditionary Army will come back to rest for a period of time and then follow the Stone Bear on the expedition. It's just that the plan is not as fast as the change. As the rumors of the Cherokee tribe easily conquering the powerful Cree tribe continue to spread around, the originally peaceful surrounding strategic situation has also undergone subtle changes. Shi Xiong had to take a quick knife to cut the mess and level the point in alliance in the east as soon as possible, so as to build an extremely stable rear for the Cherokee tribe, even the tribe in the west or even Shawnee in the north. People have changed, so Shi Xiong won't worry anymore. The Cree tribe has already taken it, and then the Powhatan alliance is taken down. Then there will be land and sea left on the east and south sides of the Cherokee tribe. No other Indian tribe can detour to attack the Cherokee's rear. As for the British, Shi Xiong doesn't think they dare to tear themselves apart. One is that the transaction between the two parties has been going on very happily, and Shi Xiong did not see the possibility that Britain would turn his face on him. Another reason is that the British are a bit overwhelmed now. Although they have just promised the 7 Years' War, the British consumed a lot of national power in this war. They are not yet capable of fighting a super tribe that controls a population of close to 200,000. That's right. After the Cree tribe was taken down, the entire Cherokee tribe can already be called a super tribe in the entire North American continent in terms of the territory and population it controls. At present, the only tribe that can rival the Cherokee is the Cree who lives in south-central Canada. P.S. This Cree is not the Cree that was just sacked, but a true giant. The super tribe was the strongest Indian tribe in North America in the 18th century. The Cree tribe in the north is powerful, but the emperor is far away. Whether it is French or British, the power cannot reach that far, so the super tribe is not a concern for the British now. The Cherokee tribe, who conquered the southern Cree tribe, is different. The territory of this tribe is directly bordered by the 13 British colonies in North America. The British dare not easily turn their faces on such a super tribe in this era. At this point, Shi Xiong was confident in his heart. Because Shi Xiong sees it very clearly, the British are uncomfortable now. Although the British won the 7 Years' War and the French were forced to cede their large colonies in North America, those colonies were tasteless to the British, except that New France in the north was better. The Mi River Basin in the middle, the French Louisiana, is a pure taste. In the middle of the 18th century, the British did not have the ability to develop the Mi River Basin. Moreover, the British colonists who are now in the 13 British colonies are also undercurrents. Especially in the middle of the 18th century, the economic development of the British North American colonies was very rapid. The northern part of the industry and commerce were developed, shipbuilding was one of the main industrial sectors, and even the British mainland had many people buying ships made here. The central region is rich in food. The wheat, corn and other crops produced in colonies such as Virginia, Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Maryland are exported to the European market and are highly sought after in the European market. As for the prosperity of the southern plantation economy, black slaves belong to the plantation. The main labor force, in addition to rice production, mainly grows cash crops such as tobacco, cotton and sugarcane. Many products produced in the British North American colonies can even compete with British products in the international market. This seems very good, but the impact on the British industry and agriculture is actually great. Before, Britain fought a 7-year war with France in order to gain control of the North American colonies. Although Britain defeated France and controlled most of North America, I'm reading www.youcanshoe.com. But the long-term war caused financial difficulties. In order to alleviate the increasingly serious financial pressure, the British government is now continuously increasing taxes on the colonies in North America, and implementing a high-pressure policy, arbitrarily squeezing and cruelly exploiting the colonies. The United Kingdom hopes that North America will always be its raw material source and commodity market, and is doing its best suppress the economic development of the colonies and extract more wealth from the colonies. The British immigrants in the colonies must be very dissatisfied with the exploitation and restraint of the British government. Now the contradiction between the two sides has arisen, and it will not take long for this contradiction to become more acute. And the defeated French have been making trouble for the British in North America. Even the Spaniards and Dutch who have been coveting the North American continent have also secretly taken action. Now the British can definitely be called internal and external troubles. This point, Shi Xiong does not believe that the politicians of the British government will not see it. In addition, the Cherokee tribe has always had a good relationship with the British government. So Shi Xiong is pretty sure that the current British government has not the courage to turn face with the Cherokee tribe. After all, in this situation of internal and external troubles, to win over all the forces that can be wind, and to ensure the stability of the North American colonies, this is the most important thing for the politicians of the British government to consider. And making friends with the powerful Cherokee is undoubtedly very in line with the vital interests of the current British government. https://genius only remembers the address of this site in 1 second. Mobile version reading URL. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.